Hello, everybody. Welcome to another Friday live stream, college show, Discord channel, question and answer, and all kinds of other things that we have going on in the Duran ecosystem. Welcome, everybody. Hope you are doing well this Friday. Hope you had a really good week. We are in the middle of March, Alexander, the middle of March, the Ides of March, correct?
Absolutely. March, of course, being the month named after Mars, the Roman god of war. It was the time for the campaigning season. It was when the Roman army went marching to attack its enemies. So let's hope we don't have anything like that. But as you said, the Ides of March, and March, the opening of the campaigning season in the ancient world.
All right, let's do an around the world. And around the world real quick as people check into this live stream. As you enter the building, click that like. Let me have a little bit of water. Excuse me. Hit that like as you enter the building, and let's do an around the world. Alexander, first, let's start with you in the UK. How are you doing, Alexander?
I'm very well. It's been a beautiful, stunningly gorgeous day here in London, and when London does a really good weather, it's fantastic, and we all feel really well and feel great. And of course, that puts us all in a great mood. I've just been walking my dogs this morning, and they're in a glowing state also. So I'm in a glowing state, looking forward to our interactions with our viewers today, and looking forward to it keenly, as always.
All right, let's see where we have people joining us from. We have Reckless Abandon. How are you doing? How are you doing in Hastings, UK, Cape Town, Serbia? Alexander in Serbia, how are you? In Vancouver, British Columbia, Sussex, England, Belgium, Melbourne, Australia, Indonesia is in the house, London is in the house, Ottawa, Canada, Canada again. Let's see. This channel is obsessed with Biden. He is the president, guys.
Absolutely,
he is the president. He's making a lot of news.
Absolutely, we can't get away from that fact. He is.
He's the president of the free world. Whatever. Is it even a free world anymore, or is it not a free world?
Well, good question, actually.
Yeah. I think that's up for debates. Maybe that's a show in and of itself. If YouTube would allow us to have such a show. From South Ontario, from Houston, from Germany. Yeah. From Germany. Let's see, Alan in the UK. Nancy, how are you doing, Nancy? In Montreal, the beautiful city of Montreal. Let's see, 24 degrees Celsius in Florida. All right, well, you've got us all beat in Florida with the weather, that's for sure. Hello from Denmark. All right, let's see where else people are joining us from. Hello from Jupiter, the great big planet of Jupiter. All right, Galway, Ireland, Brazil. Where else? Denmark, Spain, Pennsylvania, USA. Let's see, Spartan Warrior Queen is in the house moderating today. Spartan Warrior Queen, the #1 moderator in all the universe, including Jupiter. Including Mars, including the sun. Alexander, Spartan Warrior Queen. Netherlands is in the house. St. John's, Canada is in the house. I believe we have another moderator. Let me see if we have another moderator in there. Athena, Quarantine Blues. Yeah, well, join the club. Banayotis, join the club. We are all quarantined here as well. How are things in London, Alexander?
I think they're getting a little easier. I mean, there are still rules, but they're only sporadically enforced, and it's possible to go out and walk the dogs, as I've just done, and see people and exchange things with them. I mean, restaurants are still closed, bars are still closed, pubs are still closed, many shops are still closed. So I mean, it's not open by any means, but mostly I think things have eased off a little. So that's something.
All right, so Mishi Melody is also moderating and also moderates the Discord server. Guys, I will put a link to the Discord server soon. I'll pin it up top. And about 30 minutes into the show, I'll pin the call in the call-in link as well, so we could chat about geopolitics and what's going on in the world. And of course, we will answer all the super chats that come our way. We'll try to answer them as best we can. And Alexander, are you ready to begin this show?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I think people are here. We've gotten likes. Hit that like, everybody. Hit that like button. Remember to pay us a visit at the Duran shop and pick up some merch as well. Alexander, the title for this live stream is Putin versus Biden. And I also put in the title the USA versus China, because we cannot forget that in Alaska, we have a summit between the United States and China, and it has not gotten off to a good start. That's for sure. So I know you have a lot to say on that as well, Alexander. But first, let's start with, they're dubbing it Killergate. That's what they're dubbing this latest row between the United States and Russia. And really, this is kind of ABC George Stephanopoulos manufactured, and Biden White House manufactured, because this is kind of out of thin air. But it is the big story that is being reported on a lot in Europe, if I have to be honest. But in the United States, it doesn't seem that the mainstream media is really picking up on this story too much. Maybe they're not so interested in the story. Maybe the story serves a different purpose than what the mainstream media has in store. So, Alexander, it is the ultimate fight, tete-a-tete. Vladimir Putin, Joe Biden in the octagon, folks. In the octagon, Alexander, in the red corner, fighting out of St. Petersburg, Russia, Alexander, wearing the red, white, and blue boxers, is a man who rides horseback shirtless. Alexander, this guy fishes in the frozen rivers of Siberia with his bare hands. And he overturns U.S. elections with just $4,000 in Facebook ads. Alexander, fighting out of the red corner, is Vladimir Vladimirovich Putin. All right. And fighting in the blue corner from Scranton, Pennsylvania, wearing the red, white, and blue nappies. A man who sniffs children, hides in the basement, and yet is still the most popular president in the history of the universe. A man who pledges to mobilize Truna Miloruzure for all America. Sleepy Despacito. Come on, man. Joe Biden. Alexander, who wins this fight?
Well, I mean, I don't think it's a contest, actually. And I think already we can see, you said that it's not been covered widely in the United States. I think you can already see why, because, of course, this is a massive embarrassment. This whole thing was staged, as you rightly say. I think it was intended partly to create more of a distance between Biden and Trump, to show that Biden is actually tough on Russia and Trump wasn't. And also, I think, to bring Biden into, show the people that Biden is actually the strong leader, because, of course, many of us have had doubts about that. And so we had this interview with Stephanopoulos, which, as you rightly say, looked to me extremely carefully choreographed. I mean, everything that Biden says is prompted by Stephanopoulos. It's quite interesting. And most of Biden's answers are very shorter than Stephanopoulos' questions, at least on this issue. All of this coming up after the US intelligence community and the White House published this dusted off old assessment from the transition period. It was originally circulated on the 7th of January 2021, which said, because two Ukrainians spoke to an American journalist who's probably John Solomon, this is my guess anyway, that proves that the Russians were somehow involved in influencing the US election. So this has all set the scene for this extraordinary interview in which Biden was led by Stephanopoulos into calling Putin a killer. Now, this has gone down extremely badly in Russia. Putin is turning it round to his advantage, which he's extremely skilled at doing. He is, after all, a judo expert. He knows how to do that, to maneuver people into all sorts of positions, which are to his own advantage. But one should not underestimate the extent of anger that there is in Russia over this comment. And the Russians have recalled their ambassador from Washington for urgent consultations. We don't know how long that process is going to take, but already the word from Moscow is that it might be a long time before the ambassador does return to Washington, that they're carrying out a detailed assessment of their relations with the United States, that they're not happy about the direction events are taking with the Biden administration. They don't think that the Biden administration is interested in improving relations with Russia, and that they're going to base their foreign policy from now on that assumption. That is what the Kremlin is saying. And in the meantime, we see top Russian officials dropping heavy hints that perhaps Joe Biden is indeed Sleepy Joe, that maybe he was, as Donald Trump Jr. rather cruelly said, an empty suit with a teleprompter. We've had Putin wishing him good health and saying, that he says that without irony, which of course means that he is saying it with irony. And we've seen Medvedev, the former president, who is now the deputy head of Russia's Security Council, going one step beyond Putin and actually saying what Putin didn't say, and said that, age has not been kind to Biden. And that explains why Biden comes up with comments like that. So, but one should not underestimate the depth of anger there is in Russia over this comment. All of this is happening at the same time as the United States is meeting China in Alaska. The person who's leading the charge there is Tony Blinken. The Chinese are furious about the way they've been spoken to in Alaska. They're firing back on all cylinders. We've had angry editorials about this in Global Times, saying that the United States needs to, treat China with respect, all that kind of stuff, which we're quite accustomed to from the Chinese. But, that doesn't mean it's not felt seriously. And all of this is happening at the same time as we've had a very weird document appearing on the website of the Atlantic Council, which is, of course, NATO's think tank, and which seems to have been authored by someone close to Blinken himself, that's Secretary of State Blinken, and who prefers to remain anonymous. There's even some rumors that the person in question is, in fact, Blinken. And it discusses at great length that China is the great strategic challenge. And it says that, and I quote now, the United States must rebalance its relationship with Russia, whether it likes it or not. Effectively reinforcing US alliances is critical. Dividing Russia from China in the future is equally so. Allowing Russia to drift fully into China's strategic embrace over the last decade will go down as the single greatest geostrategic error of successive US administrations. That's, as I said, what this long piece on the Atlantic Council's website says, possibly, as I said, authored by Blinken or by someone close to him. Well, the Biden-Putin confrontation has already basically unraveled that. And what has happened on top of all of this is that the Chinese, angry with the US about what's going on in Alaska, are inviting Sergei Lavrov to Beijing next week. That's Russia's foreign minister, and Sergei Lavrov, with the Russians angry about what Biden is saying about their president, Sergei Lavrov has accepted that invitation. So we see one arm, if you like, of US foreign policy, not knowing or understanding what the other arm is doing. On the one hand, they talk about the need to restore relations, rebalance the relations with Russia, as they put it, in order to counter Beijing. And at the same time, they insult the Russians. At the same time, they talk about, building strong opposition to China. And that famous intelligence report, or infamous intelligence report that I was talking about, went out of its way to say that China had not interfered in the elections. So it's clear to me that this is an administration of discord and conflicting voices. But what is happening is that both in relations between the US and Russia, and in relations with the US and China, it is the hardliners in both cases who are increasingly calling the shots and who are running policy. And so, as a result, instead of a real coherent grand strategy, we have a situation where the United States is doing precisely what it should arguably not be doing, which is picking fights with both Russia and China at the same time.
Yeah, bringing them closer together.
Bringing them closer together. That's why Lavrov is going to Beijing next week.
Real good strategy. Good strategy. Yeah. And maybe the White House is in complete disarray because there's no one actually leading the show. There's no real leader there. Any good organization, any good company, any good institution, any good government obviously needs a good leader, someone to call the shots. And I think it's very apparent that the United States at this very moment doesn't have that. Alexander, two news topics that maybe you want to comment on, and that is one is that Moscow snubbed Biden at the United Nations. They sent a junior diplomat to meet with the United States. The United States wanted to talk about, get this, the United States wanted to talk about Joe Biden. Joe Biden wanted to talk about commitment to values-based global leadership. That is what the Biden White House at the United Nations wanted to talk about. And they invited representatives, ambassadors of the Security Council to sit down and talk with the Biden administration about values-based global leadership, whatever the hell that even means. And Russia did not send the ambassador. They didn't send the second in command. They didn't send the third in command. They sent a junior diplomat who showed up, and she said nothing. Her name, Anna Evistyenova, and she said nothing. She showed up and said nothing. This was a big snub. And we also had Putin challenge Biden to a debate. And he basically said, and I'll paraphrase, if you have a problem with me, let's just get on TV, live, and talk it over. And needless to say, when Jen Psaki was asked about this, she pretty much said that she'll circle back. She said it's not going to happen. She said the Biden White House is very busy, and they're doing all kinds of things, and she'll circle back on that one. So, Alexander, what do you make of all this?
Well, indeed. I mean, they're very busy rehearsing with Biden what he's going to say at the news conference that's going to happen in 10 days' time. Is it 10 days or is it even longer than that? After all these long weeks, well, we haven't had a news conference from Biden. They're never going to let him debate one-to-one someone like Putin, who's able to sit for 4 to 6 hours before the media and answer and field questions and answer them effortlessly. I mean, if you watch Putin when he talks in that way, they're never going to do that. Putin knows that perfectly well. The reason he said this about Biden, he said this to Biden in that kind of way, is that, of course, what the Russians want to stress is that they are open for dialogue, but they're not prepared to accept lectures. And they didn't accept a lecture when Josep Borrell, the European High Representative, came to Moscow a few weeks ago and started trying to lecture them on the Navalny business. They fired back and they talked to him about Catalonia. They showed him film of riot police in Europe dispersing protesters. They put Borrell through a ringer at a press conference. He didn't like it at all, by the way, but they're not prepared to accept lectures. And that's the same strategy they used in response to this meeting about values. They say if the United States wants to talk about values, which means in effect read a lecture to us, we are not interested. If they want to debate us, that's another matter. We are open for debate. We are not open for lectures where the United States behaves like the school teacher, and we're supposed to be the naughty pupil. So that's what happened there. And by the way, the fact that the Russians snubbed this meeting in this sort of way is also a further indication of the fact that they are downplaying now any move to open or conduct a dialogue with the United States. They no longer expect that that's going to happen. They no longer think there's any point in conducting meetings with the United States in that way. I would add that, for what it's worth, something of the same nature happened in Alaska between the US and China. The US brought up all its various issues with China about human rights and values and those kind of things. And the Chinese just pushed back and again made it absolutely clear that they're not interested in conducting a discussion with the United States in which the US reads a lecture to them on those sort of topics, and they're supposed to sit back and accept it. So neither the Russians nor the Chinese will accept that. And I think the United States and the West needs to start grasping this. There are serious issues with both countries. The United States has serious problems with both countries. The rise of Chinese power is indeed a real challenge, a real strategic challenge to the United States. It needs to understand how to respond to that. Wasting time with pointless lectures of this nature, whether they're addressed to Beijing or to Moscow, doesn't get you anywhere. And the sooner all that rhetoric is once and for all and finally dropped and dispensed with, and the US focuses on the real important, practical, concerning issues about trade, economics, and strategic weapons, and all that, the better it will be for itself, for the American people, and the world.
A serious question is, does anyone actually want to engage with Biden? And this is a serious question, because it really seems like the Biden White House has no friends outside of, I don't even know if you could even say Angela Merkel, outside of maybe Merkel. Biden didn't call Trudeau. He left that to Kamala Harris. He didn't call Macron. He left that to Kamala Harris. Netanyahu doesn't like Biden at all, and it took forever to call Netanyahu in Israel. Obviously, Russia is done with the United States, or at least they're done with the Biden White House. I don't want to say they're done with the United States, but they're definitely done with the Biden White House. They're not going to deal with the Biden White House at all. I think that's obvious at this point. They're just walking away. They've had enough, and they've said as much. China obviously sees the weakness in the Biden White House, and they're going to capitalize on it. But my gut feeling is that China has very, very little respect for Biden, and they definitely know what his family's past with the country. Let's leave it there. They definitely know his family's past and their business dealings in China. So I'm sure they've got a lot of juicy stuff on the family there. So that gives them a lot of leverage. Modi, he's not very impressed with Biden. Bolsonaro obviously couldn't care less about Biden. Mexico obviously is not very impressed with Biden. They're even drifting more towards China at this point. The southern border is a complete mess. Much of South America, Latin America, Mexico is not happy about that either. And so I'm starting to wonder who wants to deal with Biden at this point? I mean, this is a serious question, and the mainstream media is making it seem like this is the guy, this is the savior for America. This is an absolute train wreck.
Absolutely, and just I mean, you omitted to mention Saudi Arabia, where they called MBS, Khashoggi's murderer, which he is, by the way, but that's what they said publicly. Maybe you shouldn't do that. And then, of course, they refused to sanction him or take any step against him. So they both insulted and offended and humiliated him in a region where face, by the way, is almost as important as it is in the Far East, perhaps even more so, actually. And at the same time, they showed themselves weak in handling him. Now, MBS is not going to feel sympathetic towards Biden and his administration after something like that. And in fact, he's very angry. And what did he do a few days later? He called his old friend, Vladimir Putin, in Moscow. They've not managed to sort out anything with Iran. They can't work out what they want to do with Iran. They haven't made up their mind whether they want to get involved, get back into the JCPOA or not. Donald Trump had a policy with Iran. You might have disagreed with it. You might have thought it was completely wrong. You might have thought it was completely misguided. You might have said his confrontation with Iran was a mistake. There was always a policy that Trump, I think, intended would lead eventually to a deal. I don't see any sign of any policy with Iran at all. The US, we've learned, has been trying to contact the North Koreans to speak with them. Remember, Trump had summit meetings with Kim Jong-un, which the US, the Democrats, of course, criticized. But now that they're back in the administration, now that they're back in power, they understand that they do need to have some kind of dialogue with North Korea. North Koreans are refusing to speak at all. They have no contacts with North Korea whatsoever because the North Koreans don't think there's any point in talking with the United States when it's led by Biden. And if we come to Europe, there have been two extremely interesting developments. First of all, in Germany, let's talk about Germany. I mean, one of the leaders that Biden needs to have on side, fully on side, is Angela Merkel. So what do we get instead? All kinds of threats to sanction German companies who are involved with Nord Stream 2. Now, the Germans see Nord Stream 2 as an absolute vital economic interest to Germany. You might not be happy about that, but that is what the Germans perceive. They are furious at the fact that their companies are now being threatened with sanctions. And yet that is what the Biden administration is doing. Even Britain, we can see, is starting to have concerns. Now, the British have taken this very extraordinary, and I think, by the way, entirely wrong step. I disagree with it completely, which is to increase their nuclear arsenal from 180 warheads to 260. I think it's a big mistake. I think it's wrong. But why are they doing it? Well, partly I think it's an internal thing. I think the British are worried that if Scotland breaks away, we did a video about this, that might lead people to think that British power is diminishing, so they want to increase their nuclear arsenal to argue otherwise. But there is another factor, which of course people aren't talking about, which is the fact that the British are increasing their nuclear arsenal in this way is a coded signal that they don't feel they can rely on the United States to the same degree as they once could, partly because they sense that US interests are no longer in Europe, they're drifting towards the Pacific, and they look at what is going on in Washington and with Biden, and they're not inspired with any confidence about it. So despite all the brave talk we've been hearing pouring out of Washington ever since the inauguration about how there is this great need to restore alliances around the world, those alliances at the moment are looking increasingly tattered and fragile. So there it is.
Okay, go a little bit more into what's going on in Alaska. Yeah. This is actually an important story that, once again, is not getting a lot of coverage.
It's not.
And we know Biden's history with China as well. So it's kind of interesting that Blinken is not doing so well, even though I would imagine that that Biden probably thinks it's in his circle's best interest to figure China out.
Absolutely. I think that is exactly what is happening. By the way, you're quite right. In the US, the Alaska summit is receiving very little attention. And in fact, we're getting reports from places like Reuters and AP, Associated Press, that the administration regards, one wonders which part of the administration, let's say the Blinken part of the administration, regards the Alaska summit as a one-off, and that in future there will not be such straightforward open dialogue between the US and China as is taking place in Alaska. So it's not getting much coverage or much attracting much attention in the US. In China, it is completely different. There, the Chinese media, which of course, let's remember, is state-controlled, it's run by the CCP, it's full of it. They're talking about this constantly and all the time. And we read, and I'm now reading from Global Times, this is, what they're saying, the Chinese are saying about the summit. The US is not qualified to speak to China from a position of strength. Wang, that's the Chinese foreign minister, said that the old habit of US hegemonic behavior of willfully interfering in China's internal affairs must be changed. And then the Chinese media, they talk, they brag, if you like. This is an unprecedented open face-to-face confrontation between China and the US in recent decades. It has great impact and is also a correction of the US understanding and long-held attitude towards China. It tells Washington that the US should stop pretending that they can point a finger at China. That era is over. The US must deal with China in an equal and respectful way to resolve problems with China. Now, of course, the United States cannot, certainly not while the Biden administration is in office, cannot do what that says. It cannot deal with China in an equal and respectful way. That just isn't what the Biden administration does. It's not what the neocons do. The neocons aren't about that at all. So what the Chinese are doing at the Alaska summit, what they're signaling to their own people and to the world through, as I said, their very controlled media, is that China is prepared to hit back and answer back anything that the US throws at them on this sort of nature. They're prepared to talk about problems with China, but they're not prepared to accept lectures from the United States towards China. And the Russians, of course, as I said, are saying the same thing. They're using different language, they're going about it in different styles, but it amounts to the same thing from both of these powers, which are, of course, now increasingly working and talking to each other.
Is that how you see things going now?
Yes.
For however long Biden is in the Oval Office? I mean, this is China, Russia? Is a done deal.
It's a done deal. It's a done deal. Yeah. It's a done deal. I mean, I think if I'm going to be realistic about this, I think the last opportunity to change that was when Trump became president. To be very clear, there was never any real prospect of Russia becoming hostile to China and vice versa. They would always remain, friends and partners. But there was still a possibility when Donald Trump became president that they would not become allies. Now, they're not just going to become allies, they're going to become full-scale allies. And it's as that long telegram, that article in the Atlantic Council says, that is an extremely concerning thing. I'm going to read again from it. Their bilateral collaboration, that's to say China and Russia's bilateral collaboration, now covers their militaries, intelligence and domestic security services, energy, trade and investment, and foreign policy coordination, including in the UN Security Council and other forms of multilateral coordination. Most importantly, this has meant that China no longer has to be concerned with the long northern border it shares with its Russian neighbor, a country with which it has had an adversarial relationship for most of the last 400 years. By the way, I totally disagree with the last point, but never mind. The normalization of Sino-Russian relations has freed up significant Chinese military, diplomatic, and leadership capital that Beijing now has been able to deploy elsewhere. This is gravely injurious to US global interests. Well, that's the situation we now have. And during the Trump administration, all the obstruction Trump encountered when he tried to do this rebalancing of the relationship with Russia, which this long telegram, possibly by Blinken or possibly by someone close to him, is recommending. When he tried to do this, he was obstructed at every turn, called a Russian stooge, a Kremlin agent, threatened with impeachment, grilled under Russiagate, all of that. Now it's baked in the cake, and the Russians and the Chinese, after the way they've been treated by the new administration in the first weeks that it's been in office, have now, I think, hardened their positions even further and are more committed than they've ever been before to strengthening this relationship they have with each other. So it's folly piled upon folly, going all the way back to Bill Clinton's time, made far worse, in my opinion, under Obama, who tried again also to play the Russians and the Chinese off against each other, but didn't succeed. In fact, he managed to annoy and irritate both. But now it's been turned into a situation where I think we're literally now at the point of no return.
Yeah. All right, guys. Hit that like, everybody. Let's get those likes up. And I put a new Discord server link there as well. The one that I had, that invite link was not working. So I put a new one. Let's see how long it lasts, that invite. So definitely jump on Discord as well. Let's do a couple of super chats, Alexander, and we'll continue the show. From Toilet Sauce, a €10 super chat. Putin and Biden go to a restaurant. The waitress asks, "What will you have?" Putin says, "Steak medium rare." The waitress says, "And for vegetables," Putin says, "The vegetable will have a steak as well." That's from Toilet Sauce. Thank you very much, Toilet Sauce. That's a good one. Very good. That was the first super chat to kick off the show. From Valley S, a $28 super chat. Thank you very much, Valley S. As always, thank you so much. Let's see. Bob Sonnenberg is a new member to the Duran community. Welcome, Bob. Syrian Kuri says, "We are living in the end of times. Lucky us." That's from Syrian Kuri. That's super chat. Yes, Alexander, you want to?
I don't accept that. I think we must avoid getting into this apocalyptic language. But the problem is that if we go on in the way that we are doing, with the United States basically mismanaging its foreign policy in the way the Biden administration is doing, and I've expressed my own concerns about the economic policy and all of that. It's not the end of times, but it's going to be very, very rough times ahead. Rough times for the United States, rough times for the world. We need peace. We need economic development. We need political stability. We don't need geopolitical confrontations, which are pointless. And of course, the United States, which has massive resources, can turn itself around. It can rebuild its economy. It's all the means and all the resources to do that. And that should be its priority at this time. And it can be done. So, end of times, I don't think, but certainly difficult, bad, or as the Chinese would say, interesting times? Yes, certainly.
All right, from Mark Hewitt. Biden's planned rapprochement with Russia smashed. HY, hasn't he resigned?
Well, don't wait too long. I mean, he might resign anyway, because of course there's all the other problems. I mean, we're going to see what this new press conference we've been promised amounts to. First of all, will it even happen? Secondly, what kind of format will it take? But one thing or another, I mean, straightforward about this, I don't think he's going to be president for very long. So he may resign, or he may be, or we may have an announcement, let's put it like this, that he has resigned, or who knows. But on your other serious point, that if somebody in the administration does have a ambition for some sort of rebalancing with Russia, well, that's already gone. I mean, it's already been shot to pieces before that project even got off the ground.
All right. From, let's see, from Juha, a super sticker. Thank you very much, Juha, for that super sticker. For Francis, a super sticker as well. Thank you very much, Francis, for that super sticker. From Plebeian, the UK will remember Biden over Brexit and the Crown. From Plebeian, the UK will remember Biden over Brexit and the Crown.
Well, possibly. I mean, I think the Biden administration is a unique administration. By the way, I don't think Donald Trump's was. I think Donald Trump was a singular and extraordinary individual. But in so many ways, I think Trump was a return to a much more traditional American foreign policy. People always go on about, that it was transactional and focused on national interest. But that was the kind of foreign policy that the United States used to follow for most of its history. And very successfully, by the way. That's why it became a superpower. It built up its economic strength. It became the economic colossus, became a tremendous cultural colossus also. And it did so by pursuing its national interests. But the Biden administration is different. I'm completely unable to understand the logic of its policies. And I think already you're starting to see more and more people around the world starting to have asked the question, what is this administration doing? What is it all about? I'm starting to see, by the way, around the world, and I believe there's even one or two parallels being made of the same nature in the United States between this administration and the Carter administration, which is another rather strange period of American leadership as far as the world was concerned.
Yeah, but Carter hasn't had his senses.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And
he knew where he was.
And in some ways, and I give this to him, a very well-intentioned man. I mean, he had some strange ideas and was easily led and manipulated by people like Brzezinski, who was working for him. But, he had his senses about him. This administration is different. It's unique. It is the most extraordinary administration, I think, in American history.
Not in a good way.
Not in a good way, no.
All right. Let's see. From Craig Ferguson. Have you watched you both for a while? I believe Alexander could have a hidden talent for political interviews. Question is, who would Alexander most like to put in the hot seat at this time in politics?
Oh, Joe Biden, no question. I'd love to get my teeth into him. I mean, I think that would be an absolutely, I think that would be a famous encounter. I think the world would be fascinated. It'd be very interesting to see how he would respond. Would I get come on, man, and I agree, and all that? That would be very, very interesting indeed.
That'll never happen. That'll never happen. That would be interesting to watch, though.
Yeah, it would be very interesting to watch. Yes.
Okay. Thank you for that super chat from Francis. $5 super chat. Time to reverse the legacy of Nixon and Kissinger.
Well, yes. I think Nixon and Kissinger were extremely clever people. I think we have to give them that. And I mean, they did, in a way, maneuver very skillfully for the United States. I mean, they did exploit the Sino-Soviet rift very, very cleverly for the United States. But, they brought to US foreign policy a cynicism and a focus on power and on the pursuit of power, which I think was dangerous and which was often conducted in deeply immoral and very violent ways. And I'm afraid that is definitely a legacy we need to see put behind us.
All right. We have another super sticker from Peace, $20 super sticker. You are amazing. Thank you very much for that super sticker, Peace. From the English Loyalist, super chat. We are seeing the end of U.S. global power. Good news that will put two superpowers against each other, both China and Russia. As much as we see them as allies, they will turn on each other like the Allies and Soviets. Well, a lot of people do think that Russia and China could eventually lock horns.
Well, who knows? It's possible, but I have to say, and I come back to that thing about the long telegram, which is, that the Chinese and the Russians have historically been adversaries. It's worth pointing out they do share the longest border in the world, and they established that, the broad outlines of the border. It's moved places a bit, but they became neighbors in the 17th century. And they have never fought in that time a full-scale war with each other. And there have been times also when Russian-Chinese relations were very close. The Russians were the first European country to establish full diplomatic relations with China in the 18th century after the Vatican. So there was a major Russian diplomatic presence in Beijing throughout the 18th century. In fact, many people don't know. And for a very long time, the Russians had very good relations with the Chinese at that time. And they also had very experienced scholars about China. And they also used to receive diplomats from China. This is in the 18th century. Then in the 19th century, it was more complicated. And there was situations where there were times of friendship and also times of tension. Then, of course, there was the period in the 20th century after the Chinese Revolution, which overthrew the emperor, when the Russians very strongly backed Sun Yat-sen, who was the Chinese leader who inaugurated the republic, and China and Russia became very close in the 1920s and for some parts of the 1930s. Then in the 50s, they were allies when they were both under communist governments. Then in the 60s and 70s, there were tensions. But in the 80s again, they became friends, or at least they sorted out their problems. So I think to argue, as some people do, that these two countries are natural enemies and that their relationship has been mainly adversarial for most of their history, of the history of their interactions, is simply wrong, actually. It's not based on a factual understanding of their past. But that doesn't mean that, in time, there might not grow problems between them. I mean, there was a time when the United States and Russia in the 19th century were very close friends. The Russians famously backed Abraham Lincoln and the Union during the Civil War, for example. And then, as we know, relations got very bad afterwards and are very bad still. So there is nothing ever set in stone. And it may be that, these two great powers will one day become adversaries once more. The point is they are not now. And US policy is driving them ever closer together. Now, I don't think that either of them was looking 10 years ago, for example, to form an alliance with the other. But that's what, in effect, is happening. They feel that the day will, at the moment, their priority is to resist the pressure each of them feel for different reasons coming from the United States. And they're making common cause. And it is US policy, the policy at the moment of the Biden administration, which is driving them together. Donald Trump understood that. He actually talked about this. He said this is this is wrong. We must have good relations with Russia because we don't want the Russians to drift into the Chinese orbit. Even someone like Emmanuel Macron seems to understand this, though his understanding of this is pretty fitful and changes from one moment to the next. And yet, despite this being so obvious, it never quite happens, because this visceral anti-Russian feeling that exists in so much of the West always seems in the end to prevail against any attempt to rethink these policies properly.
All right. We have a few more super chats. I'm dropping the call-in link, guys, into the live stream as well. So you'll see the call-in link being dropped into the stream. And we'll start taking some calls in about like 5 minutes. Let's do a couple more super chats here from Did a Pogue, a £15 super chat. Is the lack of any real opposition party in the UK a problem going forward?
It's a huge problem. Let me just give an example. Let me just give one very brief example. Boris Johnson and his government, as I said, have announced this program of increasing nuclear weapons, Britain's arsenal of nuclear warheads. There's been no debate about this in Britain of any meaningful kind, no discussion. Once upon a time, not so very long ago, the Labour Party would have been very strongly opposed to it. There would have been thousands of people protesting. There was a big peace movement in Britain. There would have been real topic of debate about this. Now it's just going to happen because the Labour Party has, to all intents and purposes, as an opposition force, collapsed. What we have is a neocon Conservative Party and a neocon Labour Party. On foreign policy, they agree on everything. And on domestic policy, they seem to agree on pretty much everything. So that just gives you one example of how wrong things are. And I mean, you could argue this has been the case right the way through on issue after issue that arises. There was even there's been, on tax policy, they seem to say the same thing. On social policies, they seem to say the same thing. There isn't, as you correctly say, a functioning opposition party in Britain anymore. It's a situation, by the way, which again is unique in our history. Always there has been Her Majesty's government and Her Majesty's loyal opposition. And the British constitutional system depends on this. It depends on the loyal, Her Majesty's loyal opposition holding Her Majesty's government to account, offering the British people with an alternative, pointing out things that could be different, challenging the government when it does things which a section of British society disagrees with. But that is no longer the case anymore.
All right, we'll take some calls in about a minute. Mark Hewitt said in my first question, I meant Blinken should resign, not Biden.
Blinken. Well, I agree.
Blinken.
Absolutely. He should never have
Blinken for the drinking.
Blinken, he should never have been appointed in the first place. I had a conversation recently with John Kiriakou. He's somebody I've encountered through Consortium News and those sort of places. He's an ex-CIA officer, and he used to work in the State Department when he was a junior official. And the person who was sitting at a desk alongside him was Blinken, Tony Blinken. And he said to me, Kiriakou said to me, it never crossed his mind that this extremely nondescript, second, third-rate official would one day rise to become Secretary of State. And I think that's exactly how I feel about him. He's facile and has no real gravitas, and he's simply not up to engaging with the likes of Lavrov or Wang Jianxi, the Chinese foreign minister. He's just not up to it. And he shouldn't have been appointed. And of course he should go. But of course, as we've seen increasingly around the world, the best way of succeeding is to fail. The more you fail, the more you succeed and the more you rise. It's happening in the European Union. In fact, it's structural in the European Union today. Unfortunately, it's starting to creep into the United States. I can remember when the United States had diplomats and foreign ministers who were serious people.
Yeah, well, the more mediocre you are, the more you rise in today's
Absolutely.
world.
Absolutely.
Let's, Alan, I'm going to bring you into the live stream real soon. I just want to do one more super chat here, and it's from Hunger. Big fan, watching you since 2018 over the Brexit saga. Looking back, it seems like Brexit was a total waste of time, given all the problems post 2020. That's from Hunger.
Yeah, I wouldn't say it was a total waste of time. I mean, it was an important act of resistance and defiance. And if it had been defeated, if it had been straightforwardly defeated in the way that looked as if it might have been, I mean, in 2019, I think we came very close. Then I think that would have been a terrible signal for Britain and for the world as well. It would have meant that the European Union really is Hotel California, and there's no way out.
Yeah, it is in a way. All right, let's keep the show rolling. Let's do some calls. Alan, are you ready? I'm going to bring you into the live stream. Alan, how are you doing?
Hi, guys. Can you hear me?
Yes, we
Clearly.
can. Alan,
well done.
What's up?
Great, terrific. Good to see you. What you just said, Alexander, about British politics is 100% correct. But what I'm going to ask you about is, considering the missile strikes from Israel on Syria recently and last week's Israeli Air Force bombing in Syria, what do you think the Israeli strategy is for survival in the future? And what's their strategy with dealing with Palestinian nationalism? Thanks, guys.
Yeah, thank you very much. Well, I think you put your finger actually on a number of important points. Firstly, these strikes on Syria are not gaining anywhere near enough attention. I mean, this has been an ongoing saga that Israel has been conducting these strikes on Syria. I mean, there is a war on Syria, between Syria and Israel, and people always forget that these countries are actually in a formal state of war. They have been in a formal state of war ever since Israel was founded in 1948. I say that because I sometimes read that Israeli strikes on Syria are contrary to international law. Well, it is true that there are ceasefire agreements between the Syrians and the Israelis, but always those ceasefire agreements are within a framework of two countries that are in a state of war with each other and have been, as I said, ever since Israel's founding. On top of that, we also have the fact that Syria is a close ally of Iran, and of course that is extremely concerning for the Israelis because they perceive a major existential threat to themselves from Iran, or say they do. I have to say that there's also an internal domestic Israeli political imperative here, in that Netanyahu, who is under a lot of pressure domestically, needs to always show that he's asserting Israel's rights and Israel's strengths and is acting to defend Israeli interests. And that's partly, I'm sure, one reason why these strikes are happening. Now, what are Israel's long-term plans to secure its own survival? I think, first of all, it has a number. One, it has developed, as we all know, everybody knows, a powerful strategic nuclear arsenal. And at the moment, it is unique in the Middle East in possessing it. And it is determined that no other country in the Middle East should acquire nuclear weapons either. And that's always the risk and worry about the situation in Iran. But I think if the Israelis perceived that Iran really was heading towards developing nuclear weapons, we could very well see Israeli strikes there. So the Israelis see the possession of that nuclear deterrent as a guarantee. And by the way, I think it is accepted in the region. Secondly, I think the Israelis have come to realize over some years that though the alliance with the United States is critically important and has been extremely important for them in the past, it's not something that can be depended on indefinitely. And that is why Israel has been reaching out to other countries, notably Russia. It has been striking that Israel has, for example, consistently refused US urging to impose sanctions on Russia. The Israelis try to maintain a good relationship with Russia, not because they see Russia as a substitute for the United States, but because they don't want the Russians to do what happened in the 1970s and 1960s, which is ally wholly with the anti-Israeli Arabs and become their weapons supplier and bankroller, and they're hoping also that the Russians will restrain the anti-Israel forces in the Middle East to the extent that they can. Now, the third arm, how to deal with Palestinian nationalism, is the most difficult and complicated of all. And here I'm going to say it straightforwardly. I don't think the Israelis have any real plan for that. I don't think they know what to do about it. They have a very large Palestinian population that they administer. They've never found people that they feel themselves that they can talk to. They perhaps are unwilling to accept that unless you talk to people, you're not going to change them. And I'm afraid that is one aspect of their policy, which I think has not really worked and is not working really well. And I think that relying indefinitely on control mechanisms to keep this population, this Palestinian population, under control is a policy which can work in the short term, but which over the long term is going to become more difficult and more dangerous, and actually in reputational terms very bad for Israel. So it's a complicated topic, a very important one, very interesting one that you broached, and I think there's many answers. I forgot to also say that, of course, Israel is also pursuing normalization policies with an increasing number of Arab states, and it has been successful in doing that. It's got relations with Egypt, obviously, and it's also got relations now with the Gulf states, or at least some of them.
All right, Alan, that answer your question?
Thanks. What I was just thinking is, could the Israelis take advantage, which I think people are going to try to do, take advantage of the weakness of the new American administration and do something without their consent?
Absolutely. I think they very much could do. And I think that's, again, a problem when you don't have a strong president in charge. In fact, the Israelis have actually spoken about this. They have actually said that if they perceive a threat from Iran, they will take action, and they're ready to take action themselves and will strike Iran, even if they don't have US permission to do that. And the Iranians, in response, have made all sorts of threats which show how precarious and dangerous the situation potentially is. One cannot dispense with a strong figure in the White House if you want a stable international situation, particularly in the Middle East. You need a president who's active and engaged and able to pick up the phone and speak to the Israeli prime minister with the full authority of the United States and say, Netanyahu, I'm very sorry, at this time, a attack on Iran is absolutely something that the United States will not support, but on the contrary, will vigorously oppose. If that is the president's assessment that is US national interests. We don't have a president like that at the moment. And in that kind of vacuum, all sorts of things could happen, not just, by the way, from the Israeli side. Other players in the Middle East, of whom there are many, might also feel that they can take advantage of a power vacuum in Washington. We are also seeing, over the last couple of months, a revival of ISIS, for example.
All right, Alan.
Thanks, guys.
Thank
Thanks.
you. Thank you as always, Alan. Have a great day. All right, we got a lot of people in the green room, in the waiting room. We're going to bring them up one by one, Alexander. So let's keep the show moving. Zariel, you are up. You're up, Zariel. Then we got Charles. We'll go Charles, Upnosense, Christian, and we'll keep it moving with Bobio, Simon. We got Google Whistleblower. We got a lot of people lining up. So Zariel, I'm going to bring you to the stream. Are you with us, Zariel?
Good afternoon, gentlemen. Can you hear me?
Good afternoon. How are things going?
Fantastic. How are you all doing?
We're doing well.
We're very well.
Good to have you here. What's your question? What's your comments? What's up in the world today?
Gentlemen, a lot is happening in the world today, and I missed last week as I wrote in the back room, in the green room. I would like to know if you've watched the documentation Hoaxed by Cernovich, Michael Cernovich.
Cernovich and Stefan Molyneux. Stefan Molyneux has talked about it a bunch, but I have not seen it. I don't know if you have, Alexander.
No, and I haven't seen it either. Tell us about it.
It's a documentation about the situation in the United States right now, what is happening and what has happened. With Black Lives Matter, with the ultra-right, far left, how the divide and conquer is actually taking place in the United States right now, how press is actually deleting the digital assassinations of people of different groups. I highly recommend that you watch it. It's extremely interesting.
I will watch it, certainly, absolutely. I mean, that's some rather remarkable things that seem to be on this thing, and I will certainly watch it. That's very, very interesting. Is there a point you want to make about this?
It leads me to the question of how do you gentlemen see the United States? Is it in a decline which is going to be permanent, or do you see an option that there is a turning point for the country? Right now, it does not look like it.
No, I think the short answer is that the option of a turning point is absolutely there. If you look at the United States today, it remains a tremendous concentration of wealth and power. And it still has its people. It still has all the entrepreneurial drive and skill it always had. It still has a stable political system, just about, though that's been undermined on the edges in all sorts of places. It also still has abundant natural resources and an extremely advantageous geographical position where essentially it's an island and therefore not directly threatened. The United States can turn things round. The problem is that the people who are in charge of the United States are not intent on turning things round. They are instead pressing on with all kinds of extraordinary ambitions, which are unrealizable. Can I just return to something that I read in that long telegram, which, as I said, I think might have been written by Blinken or somebody close to him. And I want to just, there was one paragraph which, for me says it all and explains the mindset of these people and how detached from reality they are. And he talks in this long telegram about why it is essential for the United States for the next century to remain the world's, master hegemon, and why it must devote all its energies and all its resources to that purpose and defend itself everywhere and in all places, and above all confront China. This is principally a thing about confronting China. But then he goes on to say that, the United States losing its position would degrade the American soul, including the innate understanding of who Americans are as a people and what the nation stands for in the world. To abandon this mission would mean the city upon a hill would fade from view as the United States became just another nation state in narrow pursuit of its national self-interest. Now, just unpack that. What that person is saying, who's written this, is that it's somehow wrong for the United States to pursue its national self-interest. Because if it pursues its national self-interest, it's going to degrade its soul. I mean, it's very weird thinking, actually, very strange thinking, and so contrary to the way America used to be, what the United States was all about. The United States was absolutely about pursuing its national interests. Under most administrations, through most American history, they had protectionist economic policies. They pursued a policy of not involving themselves in other people's quarrels, looking for monsters to slay. But of course, they were very strong about what they were, and that made them into the great superpower that they became. What this person says is, this person who's written this says, you need to dispense with all of that. Don't subordinate everything you are and everything you have towards this policy of maintaining your hegemonic position. Don't worry about your national interests, because if you do, then you're going to degrade your soul. I mean, that is a formula, if you think about it, for decline. I mean, you're putting your actual objective interests and needs to one side and subordinating them to something. Well, I'm not even completely sure what precisely. But if that kind of thinking continues to prevail in the United States, and of course, it's the neocon thinking, that's the neocon outlook, and it's the outlook that prevails in the United States today, then decline is inevitable. But to be very clear, it will not have come from the American people or from the nature of America itself. It will have come from the political leadership of the country, which is leading the country into a dead end.
Well, I see that the same way as you do. I have 2.5 more points that I'd just like to really bullet point to you, gentlemen, because it's lost a little bit. Have you heard anything about Jepstein's madame? Any new information, which also leads to the question, what is actually happening in the case of Jeffrey Epstein? That has gone totally AWOL.
Well, hasn't it just? I mean, you're absolutely right. We did a program on this quite recently in which we basically looked at some of the recent things. Carry on.
There was news just today, actually, Alexander, that I read. I didn't get into the whole story, Zariel Alexander, which said that the judge is not allowing much of the salacious details and information of the case to get out into the public.
Oh, well, there you go. So
that was the last I read.
So we can read from that, by the way. I mean, this is how I decipher that code. So we're not going to be told all sorts of things that might be embarrassing.
No juicy details. Yeah.
Not going to learn about embarrassing things which might embarrass all sorts of other important and powerful
like
people.
Andrew.
Exactly. Well, indeed. So that's what it seems to me all about. And by the way, since you brought up Andrew, Alex, just to mention a point which I've seen a few people make, fewer perhaps than you might expect, that all this vast amount of talk about what Meghan Markle said, a member of the royal family said about her child, so little about what Prince Andrew probably did do. Which would you consider the more serious thing? What Andrew did, or perhaps did, or allegedly did, or what a member of the royal household said about Meghan Markle's child?
Well, that goes full circle to what Zariel's question was, Alexander. That's why I'll say that I don't think that the US or much of Europe or the UK can survive going down this woke path. I really don't. I see it more as these countries are imploding from within. The minute you deny science, the minute you deny family, many people may say the minute you deny God, many people will say that you won't be able to function as a stable society and a stable country. And the minute as these societies continue to go down this identity politics, woke, critical race theory, as they go down this path, I don't see them holding together. I really don't. That's my own opinion. I don't know. I don't think it'll happen from the outside, but I think the collapse will happen from within. And, the countries that are promoting, and I'm thinking of maybe Hungary, I'm thinking of Russia. I mean, I may be missing countries as well, but I think the countries that are promoting the family unit and are promoting the stability within society of the family, I think those countries definitely have a future, promoting culture, promoting the history of the country, promoting whatever that country's religion may be or whatever that country's identity is. They have a future. I think when you start going down this path, you're going to rot from within, and that's where I think all the West is heading towards. I don't know what you have to think of. What you think about that, Zarael or Alexander?
If I may, if I may, actually, very good point, Alex. That I find spirituality, which is a topic that has been going around the world recently. I've been hearing it from the Eastern or the ex-Warsaw Pact countries, where we're looking at the United States. They're all following into the line of Putin, where a family exists of a man, a woman, of two opposite sexes, children, etc. Whereas the United States, here I see this woke movement, the spirituality, even if you want to leave that out, whether you believe in God or not, a certain amount of ethics is necessary for society to function. And the ethics is being lost in the United States or in the Western Hemisphere due to whatever reasons or whoever has influence in there. So I think even Europe is in danger of losing its identity. We have too many countries in Europe, and where Macron even says French don't have an identity. It's hilarious, if you ask me.
Well, it isn't. I mean, can I just say I completely agree with the view that the real threat to the United States does not come from without. I mean, it's not the Chinese and the Russians ultimately. It comes from within. I mean, even to the extent that, say, China represents a challenge to the United States, it only is a challenge because certain people in the United States facilitate that challenge, and they do it in all kinds of different ways. But I mean, they are fragmenting and weakening the United States itself. If we talk about all of these issues, what's been fascinating to see is how we no longer talk about the American people as a sort of single united community anymore. We are focused instead on dividing them from each other on sort of identity grounds. Now, how does that going to make the United States stronger? Think about it. It's almost by definition going to make it weaker.
Pardon, that is exactly why I recommend this documentary, Hoaxed. My cat is now here and wants to talk.
Your cat is recommending it as well.
Certainly, and she loves to talk. So please, that's a full circle right there. And my last point, I do see that we have quite a lot of international, of course, all over, a lot of Germans also, German-speaking people here. There is a YouTube website that is also coming to Corona. They have been up there for 44 weeks. Today was 44, and they said something very interesting. I'd like to also recommend it to you, gentlemen, because there are a lot of English-speaking guests on this website. They do this weekly update. They're lawyers and doctors from around the world giving information. And I know we have to be careful with this word on your channel. That's why I won't mention it too often. But would you mind if I post a link on this stream right now, so people who do understand German and English can look it up and listen to it? They are very long. They go sometimes even 5 hours, but it's worth the information. It's true, actual information.
Give the plug in the live stream, and we'll grab it and we'll repost it.
Okay, thank you, gentlemen,
awesome.
very much.
Thank you, Zariel. Take care.
Weekend.
You too. All right, let's bring in No Sense. Then we'll bring in Charles and Christian, and we got Bomeo and Simon and Zahir and Google Whistleblower. We got a lot of people waiting. So let me just get those people lined up here. And No Sense, I'm going to bring you in.
Can you hear me?
Can you hear us?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Clearly.
Okay. Good evening. Good afternoon, gentlemen.
Good evening.
Firstly, as Alexander so charmingly put it when he wants to underline something, I want to congratulate you and thank you for all the effort you put into these channels. I believe they are extremely informative and also very friendly. You make us feel at home when we're watching you. And since I'm watching you regularly, I can testify that you obviously put a lot of effort, and I believe sometimes you got really tired with all the searching and putting things together. So again, thank you for it's very enjoyable. And something else, even Alexander lives in the former imperial capital of the world, and Alex spent a lot of time in the current imperial nation. You don't display not a little bit of the arrogance inherent to the citizens born and assuming their imperial identity. Russians, Englishmen, Americans, they look at us. I'm from Eastern Europe, from Bucharest, from Romania, with a little condescendence, and I stopped there.
Right.
And another thing, if I may, Alex, I noticed the art display you put behind you very often, paintings, drawings, icons, Orthodox icons. And suddenly, yesterday, when I forced myself to be when the streams takes place, the last weeks I got too late and watched them only recorded. I suddenly realized I lived a lot of years next house to a Greek painter. Maybe you know him, Thanasis Fapas or Fampas. He, I believe, he came into to Romania after the 70s military coup. He was a very strong leftist and but extremely patriotic. Extremely. I spoke with him a couple of times, and he was a very interesting character. Look into it. Maybe you.
Yes, I will. I will look into it. I actually have very close ties with one of the foremost experts in Greek art, my father. So he will. I will definitely ask that name to him. Yes.
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 And I remember the perks of being a painter. One of my rooms, the windows from one of my rooms were pointing to the entrance to his. He lived the next house upstairs, and very often, especially in the summer times, a stream of extremely pretty women models visited him, and I was very impressed.
I think that's one of the perks with living in Romania. I think in Bucharest. I've been many times.
Thank you for the compliment, but
beautiful.
These were
one of my favorite
above average. He was he had an eye for the thing. And if you look at the paintings, I have an album of him published here, I believe. Yes, in Romania was published. You'll notice he had a very Byzantine, I don't know, a very stylized way of painting, and well, I believe he enjoyed a lot his life, and he was a fiery character, and he was a really
a true Greek.
A true Greek, yes. And he died. He died about 10 years ago, I believe. But he lived a long life and beautiful. He had two daughters. Both, I believe, embraced, I don't know with what success, the musical career. Yes. I don't really have. I have a question, but it's very hard. It isn't related with today's topic, but it is related with every other topic. My guess is, and I don't think I'm mistaken here, that the vast majority of your audience is above 35 years old. What can you do to attract younger people? Because I believe the problem with humanity is the younger generation.
The younger generation. That's a good question.
It's a very good question. I should say that
yeah.
Go on.
Yeah. I was just going to say our stats are. I think you are right that we definitely, when you go into our analytics, and see our age groups, we definitely are. I would say a demographic of 30 plus for sure.
Yes, I believe so.
Yeah. I've no doubt of it, actually.
But we do have some younger.
I'm certain. But how can you interest him in? Regarding to Biden, I don't think anyone in the countries who still have a leadership. There are many countries who don't have a leadership, France included. You are talking about Macron. It's a joke. Germany, Merkel is clearly fading. But the Russia, China, Brazil, India, maybe, I think they're desperately searching for a Karl Rove or Zbigniew Brzezinski, someone behind the presidency, who might be the spokesperson for the deep state. I don't believe there is one. Kamala Harris is, let's skip over. So who are they going to talk to?
You are absolutely right. I think we've even talked about it once before. This is a fundamental problem because there is no shadow figure behind the scenes who's in charge and in control. There isn't anybody like this. Every single part of the administration does its own thing, and there is no central core holding everything together. There's no Brzezinski, obviously. There's no Kissinger, whatever you might have thought of Kissinger.
Indeed.
And the reason is that even those sort of people have to work through the president in some way, because in the United States, the Constitution of the United States makes the president the linchpin of the system. And the nature of the American bureaucracy also is that it's very dispersed and divided. The various agencies that make up the bureaucracy are almost separate empires. There isn't a cabinet system like there is in some countries where everybody, they regularly get together and they meet and talk things through. It doesn't work like that. So unless you have a president in active control, or if not at least in active control, someone who's prepared to delegate much of what they do to one individual, then what you get is increasing dysfunction. And you're quite right. I think all over the place, many capitals, in Moscow, in Beijing, in Delhi, in Brasilia, in South Africa, in wherever, they're all looking and they're saying to themselves, if we want to talk to someone, there's a crisis and we need to talk to someone in Washington. We need to pick up the phone and talk to someone in Washington. Who do we talk to? Do we talk to Blinken? Well, he's not very impressive, doesn't seem likely. Do we talk to Kamala Harris? Well, frankly, she's obviously not up to it. Do we talk to Lloyd Austin? Well, he doesn't seem to be really much in charge either. Who do we talk to? And there is no
Hunter.
There is Hunter.
Maybe Newland. Newland. Very famous Newland.
Maybe Newland.
I believe this is why Texas can do what they do with the border. They're acting pretty independently in the latest weeks, and normally there would be a punishment, but I believe there's no one in Washington who could administrate.
No, what they're doing instead is that they're trying to cause to try to sort of black out all discussion of it. So apparently,
Yes,
I understand the media isn't even allowed that.
Yes.
It doesn't exist.
Yes.
That's exactly always the way to deal with problems like this. Always pretend they're not happening or don't exist.
And Biden, I'm pretty sure they did know his the stage of his mental degradation, but they pushed him forward because they the deep state in America, as in many other countries, resorted too often to below average puppets, and they're out of competitive front persons. I believe it was Biden or nothing. Trump had to go.
I agree.
This is a general problem in many countries.
I agree.
They favor below average intellectually, culturally, and morally persons.
That's how you get ahead in this globalist world. Atna says,
yes,
if you're mediocre, maybe commit a couple of crimes, do a little bit of fraud.
Yes,
you get ahead in the world.
Blackmail in reserve. Yes.
All right. Atna says, is there anything else you want to discuss? We'll get the we'll get some more.
No. Let other people.
All right. Awesome. Thank you very much. All the best to everyone in Romania. Everyone in Romania, all the best, and I hope to visit soon. Take care. All right, Alexander, let's bring in Charles, and then we have Christian. Charles, you're coming in. Are you with us?
I am with you. Can you hear me?
All right. Yes, we can, Charles. Good to have you here.
Thank you. Thank you, gentlemen, for having this opportunity. I thank you for having more of an international perspective than some of the other independent media. And thanks for exposing the corruption and the incompetence of our governments. And I'm encouraged that you have such a large audience. And there are large audiences, that a lot of independent media have large audiences. And so my question is, what do we do? How do we change it? How do we have the people? And we need to be able to organize it. And I have an idea, but I'd like to hear what you guys have come up with.
Can I ask you a question before you answer, Alexander, to Charles? Charles, do we have the people? I mean, that's my question. I'm just kind of asking that because sometimes I think we do have support. Sometimes I think we don't. Maybe it's 50-50 split. So what do you think?
Well, I mean, there's always the 3% solution, right? If we had 3% of the people supporting us, supporting our ideas, then I think we do have enough control. And I do have an idea of what we might be able to do. But, you have talked to a lot of people and certainly have a lot more exposure and experience than I do. And so I wanted to throw it to you guys. And if you give me a minute, I'll explain what I think we can do.
Yeah. Alexander, and then we'll pass it back on to Charles.
I think Charles, you gave. First of all, I think there are people. I mean, can I just say? I mean, I'm one of these people who, for whatever reason, I manage to speak to lots of people every day. When I go walking, when I take a cab, and of course, coming back to an earlier question, my wife is a university teacher, so have some knowledge of the student bodies and what goes on there. My impression is that this is a time when many people are very dissatisfied and they are searching for some way out. Now, the problem is we're all divided from each other because there's all these plans to set us against each other on all these different issues. And I think, Charles, you actually provided the word. We need to organize. Organization is extremely difficult, but that's what's needed. And in order to provide that degree of organization, we need some degree of information as well. We need, above all, and I think this is the priority at the moment, to carve out our own media and information space. Very difficult to do, given that the platforms are, to put it mildly, hostile, given that mainstream media is obviously closed, but it can be done. And I think it is actually being done. I think that after 2020, we saw already alternative media spaces starting to emerge, and they will start to emerge at an ever faster speed. I think once the media space exists, organization will follow. And when organization follows, and when the people are there, you will actually see political movements appear. So that's a quick answer to your question, because I'm dying to hear what your answer is.
Okay, thank you. Well, obviously, I'm in the US, and you can't organize the whole country, but we can organize in many smaller local groups.
Yeah.
And in the United States, we have congressional districts. And the idea of being able to come up with 100 people, start with 100 people in a congressional district, and then pressure your representatives and media, because God, the media is horrible. Mainstream media is horrible. And pressure them. You can start with letters, and just a simple, like in the US, we don't have, we don't have single payer. So you might write a letter saying, you might write a letter to your representatives saying, we want you to support Medicare for all, and then ask the question, add 100 names and zip codes. And then you can have a dialogue with 100 people with the representative. And because now when you write a letter to a representative, you wrote a letter, the congressman knows you wrote a letter, but you don't know how many people wrote letters. But if you included 100 people, now 100 people know that they sent a letter. The congressman knows that there's 100 people, and the people know that the congressman knows. And so it's this mutual knowledge idea that we can start to, call them out on it, because they can't hide behind, just people who are making phone calls or writing letters, which is basically when you write a letter, you're kind of begging for them to do something. But if you act as a group, then you're negotiating from a position of strength. And I think that's what we need to be able to put that pressure on them. I do have like a website that I pretty much explained it. I can put that in the, wherever I could, just so that
throw
you
it in the
see
live stream. Yeah, throw it in the live stream. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Link it up. Give a plug.
Okay.
I think Charles is right, Alexander.
Well,
and I think he's right on the level not only of pressuring your legislators, but also with regards to media.
Absolutely.
And big tech. If you start at a local level, you can influence how big tech acts.
Can I just say what Charles has described? He has described exactly the strategy followed over decades by Nigel Farage in Britain. It's exactly what he did. He organized locally at the grassroots in particular constituencies. He built up his movement from the ground upwards. He organized them. He's very focused on achieving his objective, which is Brexit. And he created this movement in exactly the way that Charles has described. And gradually, it completely changed the entire political situation in Britain. And what was really remarkable about that was that he did it in a way which, because it was done from below, was for a very long time to the political class barely visible. Because, of course, the media were talking about other things, and they certainly weren't giving him any time. And so, of course, were the politicians in Westminster, until suddenly it all crystallized and they all realized that there was this huge political force out in Britain, in the country, across England, organized in individual constituencies in the way that Charles has said. So it can be done. It requires tremendous work and organizational skill. Farage had it. In fact, he doesn't get credit for it, but he did. But it can be done. And it shows, Charles, that your idea is an absolutely sound and correct one.
All right, Charles.
I just want to add that, your audience would certainly be perfect to start a base of people that could stand up to some of these people, because they get it. They know that Russiagate was a psyop. They know that the mainstream media is a farce, and so shows like yours and the audience that follow you are the ones that would be excellent to be able to be sort of ambassadors and sort of being able to expose some of the stuff that's been going on.
Absolutely.
Well,
Charles, drop the link for your site in the live stream, and
okay,
keep us plugged in to what you're doing. And of course, we're always here to help as best we can.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Alex, thank you. Alex, I just have to go for one moment because I can hear Michigan up to something. So I won't be a moment. Right. I'll be back quickly.
All right. We've got who's coming up next? Christian, you're going to be up next. And then we're going to bring in Simon and Bomeo. Let me go to the super chats real quick and knock out some of the people that have joined the community. Now that I'm flying solo, guys, we have Patricia is a new member of the Duran community. Welcome, Patricia. Sean is also a new member of the Duran community. Welcome, Sean. Asavet MD, thank you very much for your $20 super chat. We really appreciate it. Let's see what else I can clear out here from the Discord. Let me jump into the Discord as well and see what people are saying on the Discord server here. Let's see. Courtney says, Putin is only about 5'7", but he is a giant among the other leaders. Nobody can step to him on an intelligence level. Thank you very much. That is very true. Putin is not a very physically dominating guy, but he is without a doubt the most alpha leader I've ever seen. That's for sure. Putin, it's definitely impressive when it comes to interviews. Trump was also very impressive as a leader, I must say that, and also impressive in interviews. It's a real shame, guys, that we didn't get to really see more engagement between Trump and Putin. I think those two men could have made a big difference in the world if the deep state would have allowed them to work together. I really believe that. But they were not going to have it. They were not going to have it. So, oh well. Let's see what else is going on in the Discord server here. All right, that's everything on the Discord. Most of the comments on the Discord here as well. All right, let's go back to the chat and see if Alexander is with us.
I am indeed. I am
back.
indeed.
All right.
And as I said, I've got Mishkin out of his tangle, and his
okay.
daughter, and his sister.
And Margot, welcome, Margot, new member to the Duran community. Welcome, Margot. Let's bring in. Let me jump to this other. I need to get more like screens going, I think. All right, let's bring in Kristen. Kristen, you're coming into the live stream. Kristen, how are you doing? And I know Christian is in the great country of Serbia, if I'm not correct.
Yeah,
correct,
but you see, there is a Norwegian flag.
There is a Norwegian,
Norwegian,
which means I'm a Norwegian living and working in Belgrade.
Awesome.
And thank you for coming into this live stream, and thank you for seeing Alexander's dog. It's a very pleasant sight.
And I know, Christian, that you do some really good, impactful work in Serbia and in Belgrade. I do follow your work, and it's very impressive what you.
I do have a question about Biden, but I mean, let me give you some backstory. I do have a voice in Serbian national media because I am a former NATO aggressor. Who is now a fighter for democracy, for peace, and for freedom of speech. So I do have some access to national TV and everything because I did have a prominent position in NATO. Actually, Norway sent me to be the NATO spokesman in Kosovo. I didn't have that position exactly, but I was in charge of the internet service of KFOR, the NATO force in Kosovo, in 2000. So that's a privilege I have. So I hope I can have some impact. And Alex, you said you're coming to Belgrade as soon as you can.
As soon as I can.
And that applies for Alexander and any friend of the Duran, I would like to invite you when you come to the best lamb restaurant in Belgrade.
Wow. Wow.
We'll have lamb that will melt on your tongue if you like lamb.
Awesome. Yes, absolutely.
Awesome.
Yeah, and we'll have some brakia also.
All right, deal.
How about the good one? Yeah, but I mean, I'm wondering about this Biden character. I mean, in Serbia, you'd be good if you find anyone who has anything good to say about him. Because Joe Biden, he has been very, very aggressive in the past. He has been comparing Serbs to Nazis, and he has been, in general, very, very unpleasant. And we know that Biden has been and is still a dangerous warmonger. He sent soldiers back into Syria. And we know that he's maybe not completely aware of everything that is going on around him. Of course, I'd love to see an interview, as we heard, with Alexander and Biden. Of course, it's never going to happen. And the debate with Biden and Putin, of course, it's never going to happen. But it's good that he's being challenged. But my question for you two guys, my favorite geopolitical analysts in the world, is how much is Biden still a warmonger who really wants to make war around the world? And how much is he controlled by his handlers?
I think it's a very, very good question. I don't think that Biden is someone who has turned his back on the ideas he had in his past. He was a warmonger before. He is a warmonger now. He believes very much in that mission, that extraordinary paragraph that I read previously refers to this mission of the United States to engage in what is called democracy promotion, which, to be very clear, is not promotion of democracy. It's something quite different. He supports interventions around the world, and I don't think he's changed in that at all. I think that is exactly his beliefs then. It's exactly his beliefs now. However, he is not the man he was. I mean, 15 years ago, 20 years ago, at the time of the bombing of Belgrade, he was a political force in Washington. He was somebody who was active in politics, who knew what he was doing. His opinions were I think were profoundly wrong and indeed dangerous, but they were his. Today, I think he is very much a president who is, to a great extent, dependent on his handlers. So when he signs 60 executive orders, I think it's safe to assume that they are documents that are put before him for his signature. They're not ideas that he will have come up with by himself. And if we talk about foreign policy, we can see that there's enormous amounts of push and pull from different parts of the bureaucracy. I don't think he's in charge of this, but in this situation where, if you like, neocon thinking has now become so hardwired within Washington, it is always the hardliners who ultimately prevail. And Biden himself, because he is no longer, despite the fact that he is no longer fully in control, he's not someone who would in any way, because of his existing and previous beliefs, would be minded to restrain them. So we have a situation which is both dysfunctional and unrestrained.
So, Alexander, what is the real difference between neocon and neolib ideology in practical politics?
I don't think there is any.
Anymore.
None at all. I mean, neoliberalism is neocon policies for liberals, if I can put it like that.
You said it perfectly. Exactly. Yeah. Say it again. It's
neoliberal policies are neocon policies for liberals. I mean, they're identical. By the way, the British Labour Party, which under Jeremy Corbyn had appeared for a time to be drifting into opposition to all of this and to taking a genuine anti-war, anti-imperialist position, is now drifting way back into that. There's been a position paper which I received a short time ago, in which they're all the way back to all the the neocon talking points that were very much part of the Blair era. They've come back now with a vengeance.
Excellent. I was also listening to Charles. He's got very good points how to organize. I would strongly encourage the Duran audience to subscribe to email updates. I mean, you plug your Gab channels and all these Parler and all this, but I mean, the most important to stay in touch.
Yes.
It's actually staying in touch by email. It's not being censored at the moment. No. And if you search for my name on the internet, you'll find my site very easily. And also, if people are interested in getting email updates from me to stay in touch, I would love that. But I mean, we need to organize better because we have very, very dangerous enemies. We're allowed to be on YouTube at the moment, but I mean, we cannot speak about real matters for fear of being censored. So we need to be together. And with that, I say thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed. Yes.
Yes, Christian, if you're still listening, definitely send me, and Charles and all you guys, send me these links, guys, that you want me to promote, and I'll definitely put them on the Duran website. Maybe I'll carve out something on the sidebar for people to have these links of these useful resources so we can keep together. So definitely send me that to my email, and I'm sure you guys can find my email. It's all over. And just send me this information and I'll get that on the Duran site, and we'll start to get better organized on this stuff. Simon, I'm going to bring you into the live stream. Are you with us, Simon? Can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can, Simon. How are you doing?
I'm doing very well, and I'd like to thank you, gentlemen, for providing me accurate news. As you can probably tell, I'm in England, so unfortunately, I usually have to rely on things like the BBC or Sky as news sources. The lies are literally unbelievable. I almost don't want to ask the question or raise the talking point because I think everybody's in a reasonably good mood. But I do think we need to consider what the position of the United States will be in 2024. The US is, I think Alexander, and you've also mentioned it, Alex, is almost certainly going to go into another one of these wars. So that's another few $1 trillion that will be wasted and many lives. The US economic system is on the verge of collapse. I have never seen a country so quickly destroy its economy, not necessarily because of the lockdowns, but because of the actions of the Federal Reserve. And I do think we need to consider the fact that the US cannot recover from the position it will be in 2024. Even if Trump or a similar person stands again, the damage done will be so great. And depending on what happens in the 2022 midterm elections, if they are honest or not, whether you may actually see states forced to secede from the Union. For instance, if you consider the case of the UK was contributing roughly £17 billion a year to the EU. And that was a major bone of contention and was one of the major reasons we had Brexit. Texas is a net contributor to the federal budget by $250 billion. Meanwhile, they have an open border on their southern border and are going to have to accept and fund literally millions of migrants that the Biden administration is letting in. How can a Republican governor not be tempted to secede?
Well, I think you make some very, very pertinent points. And if the United States carries on along this route, all sorts of things will happen. And, that's possible. I mean, it's up to now, I think there has been a feeling in the United States, certainly since the Civil War, that it is a nation and that it should hold together as a nation. But perhaps, in fact, unquestionably, that is being tested as never before. Now, I hope we don't get that. I mean, what do they say? The wish is the father to the thought. I hope that the United States does find ways out and does turn things round. And I would like to believe, and I actually do believe, that 2024, there will still be time. But having said that, you make very powerful and very pertinent points. And if these present policies continue, and they're now very hardwired into the political system, we've seen how difficult it has been to change anything and how ruthless the political system is in eliminating oppositions and rooting out dissident ideas. If they continue along this route, then I think some of the scenarios that you outline start to become possible, precisely because I think your underlying analysis that there are major problems in the US economy which are building. The Federal Reserve Board, in my opinion, you're absolutely right. I think this QE system is, well, I'm not going to talk too much about that now, but I agree with your overall analysis there. Also, we've discussed a lot about the foreign policy. Even a country as rich, as powerful, as strong, as politically stable as the United States cannot go on this kind of road indefinitely. Sooner or later, there will be a reckoning. And when that reckoning comes, then, of course, some of the things that you just talked about Texas going its own way, other states going their own way, that may happen. I hope it doesn't. I wouldn't want to see it. I have great fondness for the United States. I studied its history when I was at university. I was somebody who was very brought up with American culture, still very attracted to all of these things. But do I discount what you say? Absolutely not. I think those are real possibilities. And I think Americans need to understand that. And if they want to prevent those events happening, they need to organize in the way that people like Charles was saying to prevent them.
I think that's true, but I don't think. I think the problems, the extent of the problems, is so great. I mean, my background is I work in cybersecurity, but I've always been very interested in finance, and I was working at a credit reference agency before the financial crash, and I was always an avid Financial Times reader until recently, because that was my first job after leaving university, and I can see the signs again that I saw in 2007 and early 2008 of a system under stress. Is for instance, I don't know if you're aware of the spike in the repo market, the interbank lending market in the US.
Absolutely.
Well, that happened in 2018. There is a second one that is occurring literally this week. The difference is that it's not cash that the banks are looking for. What they're looking for is treasuries, and because the supply of treasuries has been hoovered up by the Fed, because they obviously can see that the treasuries are going to decline in value and they wish to short them, but the supply of those treasuries is limited. So there are major stresses. I mean, I would compare the position of the United States now to by 2024 rather than now, but by 2024 I think they will be in exactly the same position as the UK was in 1940, running out of money, in a conflict that is challenging for them. But worse, they will be immensely politically divided. And
Yes.
I totally agree with you. I think the secession of any state from the US, any weakening of the United States is not in anyone's interest,
No.
except for the countries like China. But I cannot think of a case in history where you have seen the divide between the red and the blue states and the red and the blue areas be resolved peacefully.
Well, as I said, I have to say, I find your analysis compelling. I'm aware of the problems in the repo markets. I agree that this is a very difficult and dangerous situation. I hope we're not in 1940, because in 1940, of course, what saved Britain ultimately was the United States. I mean, the Soviet Union was there and played a huge role, and we mustn't ever overlook or forget that. But in 1940 specifically, the United States came financially to Britain's rescue, as British people know only too well. And the British, who found themselves in a very difficult situation, were able to rely on outside powers to help them. I wonder whether that would be true if the United States found itself in a similar or analogous situation this time. Where would the help come from? I don't know. So I hope. Go on.
Yeah, I'd say I don't think there is a coalition of powers that could help.
No.
But I would say that this is where I would disagree with you, Alexander, in terms of your comments about the British expanding the warheads on their nuclear deterrent. I do think that it's beholden to other Western nations to consider the fact that their global protector may not be there in 4 years' time or even sooner, and take their own steps to both for their defense, but also for security in a more general sense. So the UK doesn't have a strategic stockpile of oil or food. I think we should really start considering what a world would it be like without a United States as global hegemon, because that's the world I think we're moving into. But I won't take up any more of your time. Can I just say again how you are my must-watch video every day, both of you, and I'm not only I'm a Duran member, but I also subscribe to both your personal channels as well. I think you do superb work, and I'm sorry to bring everybody down, but I do think we should start considering the unthinkable, because I haven't been to the United States in 30 years. I cannot be more shocked than I am now by what has occurred in the United States. I would have bet everything I have that this would never happen to the United States. No. And I think you should read the Theodore Roosevelt speech about never allow hyphenated Americans. And I think the division that's been sown in the United States is deliberate, it's malicious, it's been organized by nations that are not the United States friends and not the friends of the West, and it's been adopted by the academic class and the ruling elite in the United States, and it's unforgivable.
Yeah,
thank you very much, gentlemen.
Thank you, Simon. I think you summed it up perfectly.
I think you made a very powerful contribution, if I may say. Can I just actually say, Alex, because of course what Simon was talking about, we must think of the world beyond the United States and the dangers involved, and the worry that there is around the world about instability. Putin, by the way, talked about the situation in the United States very recently. He gave a speech which has, again, not attracted the attention that it did. But you can see his concerns, what he thinks about the dangers of US instability. And I have his words in front of me. He said, "We are seeing what is happening, for example, overseas. Of all those who walked into the US Congress building, 150 people were arrested and face anywhere from 15 to 25 years in prison. We have no way of knowing whether the internal contradictions will stop there. We really want them to stop, and I will tell you why. We are interested in steady relations with all our internal partners. and internal squabbles for internal political reasons are in the way of achieving this kind of stability in the relations between our states. I think if there was a major crisis in the United States, China might be pleased, because from their point of view, it would lead them in a very, very strong position. Many other countries would not. Russia would not. And I think that is what Putin is saying.
The globalists would be pleased, and I think what Simon was alluding to by outside forces, I think, is definitely the globalists.
I wasn't thinking that Simon meant Russia. But what
I'm agreeing with you. I think, and I think that goes to your point where we had a caller last week who asked us about Putin and his stance against globalism, and I think that just reinforces it. That the last thing that Russia wants is in my opinion, I could be wrong, is a globalist world order. But what we are seeing is indeed a globalist world order, and that's what that worries me. And I go back to that super chat from Syria Curry, which is the end of times, and I think about where the globalists are leading us towards, and it is frightening. It's very frightening for many people all over the world, not only in the United States. And I'll go back and say that each country really needs to look within itself, to look within the family unit, within what it means to be a citizen of Greece or of the United States or of Canada, Australia, France, whatever that is, and just continue to embrace your culture, your heritage, your language, everything. And that's, to me, that's the best that, at a most basic level, that's the best that we can do to fight the globalism. But Alexander, and we'll bring in Bomio right now. Alexander, there's a lot of people that are globalists too. There are a lot of people that want this globalist world order. A lot.
Or think they do.
Or they do. Yeah,
exactly. They may not fully understand what it actually means. And there is a very great deal of conflation. Many people mistake globalism for internationalism. Internationalism contains within it a national component. It's about people from different countries working, working together, being friends, countries being friends. But it is based on an idea of nations. Globalism is something completely different.
Yeah, there was a time when you said you were American, it meant something. It transcended a lot of this identity politics stuff, this woke stuff. But they've managed to bring this stuff to the forefront. Absolutely. And that's the worst thing that could happen to the U.S. And that's why I think that the U.S. is, if it does implode, it's going to implode from within, and that's what we're seeing. And I'll bring you in Bomio right now. I also think that Trump was the best hope to stop that. And look what they did to him.
Yeah, well, quite.
So, Anyway, Bomio, I am bringing you in. Yes. Bomio, our friend from Ghana, correct, Bomio?
That's correct.
That's correct. How are you doing, Bomio?
I'm doing fine. Good afternoon, gentlemen.
Good afternoon.
I have a two-part question, and if you can educate us on that. Yeah? My first question is, why does Russia and applicably also China spend so much political capital engaging with the West, which does not want to engage? Yeah, if you can, educate us on that. That's my first question. And my second question is, why does China and Russia not engage the global South? Specifically, we in Africa will be interested in that. Craft up a new political path for the world and not invite the West. Why are they not doing that? I am saying that in that context, that if you look at since President Obama's presidency, one of the most important agenda that was put on the political calendar for African countries to adopt was, we were being told to adopt or to legislate LGBT policies. Whereas if China engages us, the agenda being proposed is let's do infrastructure development. If you have any understanding of African culture, you could describe us as conservatives, yeah. So trying to get LGBT legislature passed in Africa, which is not the most important thing for most people, is going to be very, very difficult. Yeah. So please, my first question and my second question, if you can educate us on that.
Well, the first question, can I just say straight away, many Russians, I can't speak about Chinese, but many Russians, including elite Russians, are now starting to ask themselves the same question. In fact, there's been a major point, and this has been picked up by people like Glenn Deason, people who are Russia watchers. We've come to a major tipping point in Russia over the last few weeks, months. The Navalny affair, in a way, crystallized it. They said to themselves, we've spent all this time, all this capital, trying to be, in a way, if not part of the West, at least close to the West. In some ways, it's been our policy going all the way back to Peter the Great. And what have we achieved as a result of it? It's just not working for us because the West will never accept us. The Europeans will never accept us. We are throwing away opportunities. We are throwing away friends. And perhaps we shouldn't think of ourselves as Europeans and Westerners anymore. Maybe we should say to ourselves, well, there is a much bigger world out there, and we should start looking at that other world and engaging with it much more actively than we have been doing up to now. And that is actually, it's fascinating to see how this debate has suddenly taken off. There was a remarkable article recently, which I'm not going to read it now, but I mean, it's a fascinating article written by a very passionate Russian Europeanist liberal who wrote in Novaya Gazeta, which is the arch liberal newspaper. And he said, enough of the West, enough of Europe. Europe today is unrecognizable. It makes no sense to us any longer to continue to engage with it. It's become, ludicrous and ridiculous and spiteful towards us. And we need to start thinking both about developing our own country in our own way and looking at the world beyond. This article has provoked uproar in Russia, and for weeks it became a major talking point there. But you see lots of Russians now are suddenly debating this and talking in this way. And I think that in a way, the fact that the Russians perforce are now in effect in a kind of unspoken alliance with China, which is of course not a Western country, is a reflection of this change, but it's something which they're now embracing. And I think the Chinese also are starting to say to themselves, well, we had this enormous economic interest all the time with the United States because it was the great superpower. It's the country that we needed to engage with. It was the market for our goods. But, that's changing too. So maybe we should look for other friends elsewhere. But the Russians, obviously, because they've been closer to Europe, because to a great extent they think of themselves or have thought of themselves as part of Europe, have always been drawn more closely to this Western orbit, and that suddenly has changed. I don't think the extent of this revulsion in Russia has been picked up in the West up to now. And I think that Josip Borrell, coming to Moscow was the moment it was all crystallized, because he thought that he'd be coming to Moscow and he'd be lecturing the Russians and saying, you want to be like, proper Europeans, you've got to do this, that, and the other. And the Russians finally pushed back and in plain and straightforward language said no. So I think that is changing. And I think they will start to engage much more actively with the global South. Now, bear in mind, Russia's resources are finite. They're not on the scale of China's. So I suspect that at least for the time being, it'll be China that will be playing the far more active role than Russia is. But Russia is again a presence in Africa, though only in a small way. No doubt it will become a bigger one over time. And there are Russians who are very interested and knowledgeable about Africa. And there is still obviously a memory, which you do still find among some Russians, of that period during the Cold War when Russia was very active in Africa, in many African countries, in Angola, in Mozambique, and wherever. Go on.
Yeah, I was going to say something else. Yeah, you kind of answered my question, because everyone, and you see this in the U.S. a lot, everyone they lump Africa together.
No,
and I mean, it's a massive continent with absolutely. A lot of different countries and cultures. Absolutely. And I mean, I just get very tired when it's Russia or China are they're investing in Africa or they're getting involved in Africa, and you just answered it when you mentioned the countries. So I like it when we start talking about the actual countries in Africa or in Europe, etc. We just this whole idea of just lumping the whole continent as one singular entity is what's driving a lot of division in the world. If you ask me, it's much better when we focus on the actual countries. Each country is a separate culture, identity, language, history, everything.
It is true that in Africa we have multiple countries, but if you look at the country south of the Sahara,
yes,
look, the mindsets of most people are not that different. We have the French-speaking countries, the English-speaking countries, we have our different things, but in general, when it comes to world politics and then the way we have been treated and then, the reflections of that, things are pretty in line. When I talk to my friends, family, and old school members, look, the relationship with the West is not what it used to be anymore. And to look at the interest of the West and look at the way the relationship, we cannot understand them anymore, and people are looking for alternative because the things that are of priority to us, development, get our kids to school, being able to do an evening study and go back from work, go to an evening studies and be able to go through traffic and get home on time. Those are the things that people are looking forward to. But if you are interacting with the West, it's like their agenda and interests totally diverse from what people are looking for. So people are thinking, why don't we have China, Russia, whoever, come up, craft something else, and then, we can say, yes, we will go with that agenda, and always with the West, whereby, there is a diverse of interest. So where do we go from here? That's some of the issues that some people are thinking.
Bomio, in Ghana, do you have a lot of influence from like woke Hollywood and a lot of this type of influence? Does that play a big role in Ghana, or is the society still more like Russia, where it just filters it out to a certain extent?
With our interaction, Ghana was a UK colony.
No.
So it is very UK-US minded. Yeah. So when it comes to that, yes, culturally, we've been influenced mostly by the UK and US. And you should also see from this point of view, right from independence, even before pre-independence, most Ghanaians got to educate in the UK, Canada, Australia, those countries. So, we have a lot of that influence. But as you know, also, Ghana has been politically active Pan-African. So that you have a lot of that also that emanates from Ghana as well.
Yeah. I would add the flow is also in the other direction, in that we have a Ghanaian now in the British cabinet, Kwasi Kwarteng, who is our business secretary, one of the most capable people in the government, by the way, in my opinion.
Okay.
All right. Any other questions, Bomio, or?
Oh, no, that's it.
All right. Thank you very much, Bomio. Take care.
Okay, thanks. Bye.
Bye-bye. Let's bring in Google whistleblower, of course, Tarif. Are you with us, Tarif?
How you doing, man? Hi.
How are you doing? How are things in New Orleans? Correct?
The same as usual. Trying to get my case heard, but other than that, the struggle for humanity continues. You know what I'm saying? And thank God, for y'all, because the tide lifts all boats. So by helping Julian Assange, which I like to say free Julian Assange, by helping Julian Assange and others, it helps out other people like me. You know what I'm saying? So we can't just be stuck on our own selves. We gotta, help ourselves, but also help others. And I thank God that y'all have a program like this, that y'all got basically, y'all have political scientists calling in y'all show, and also ex-diplomats and people tied to NATO. And we learned a lot from this show, and that's good. I also like to say that Bumio, please hit me up at Tarif Backup on Twitter, because when I call Fault Lines Radio in the morning, I used to bring up the infrastructure program that the Ghanaian government have, and the conversation is on this: how much is it on investment coming from outside, which can gain control of the country and basically destabilize them. But I'm saying, as long as the investment is good for the country, and it is dependent on a contract that they have, then it should contain control of their own oil refineries. Because I think China is heavily invested in Ghana too. But the thing is this: maybe Bamayo can call in to Fault Lines Radio and explain on what's going on with Ghanaian $60 billion investment. That would be good. And the other guy, Kristen Kors, he want to know about Joe Biden. Well, guess what? Scott Ritter was on Fault Lines Radio this morning, and Scott Ritter was the person, he was working with the UN weapons inspection team back in the 90s, and he went to Iraq and to inspect the different sites and whatnot. And they had one particular spot that they didn't want him to go in. The Iraqi government didn't want him to go in. So he found out Meta and Albright was bragging that, yeah, we about to bomb Iraq because they're not going to let the inspection team in. So what Scott Ritter did, he used his God-given common sense to talk to the Iraqis to let him into the defense ministry. They let him in. Him and his crew inspected for 16 hours. They got out, gave the report. They didn't find nothing. From that day on, they was mad with him. Mallory Albright, the Clintons, they was mad with the man. And Biden was one of those people that was when he was talking to him in front of the Senate, when he brought his report up, was basically belittling him. Try to turn it around as if he was the Romonger. So that should tell you where Biden head is at. We're in a dangerous times dealing with this administration, and y'all are right that it seems like because Biden is not all the way there, everybody's running their own show without no oversight, which is dangerous. You know what I'm saying? So it could be worse than just the states breaking up, which the states could break up, especially with this green technology that they want to push on these states. They don't want these states to have coal power plants. They want them to have windmills and solar energy. Those things don't work that good. It's because it's based off weather. They don't work that good. They don't produce enough amperage, enough voltage. But anyway, so things could get worse. I don't know who can step up in Biden administration and say something about this, but we're still selling carriers through the Taiwan and Chinese Strait. We still got conflict going on in Syria, where they had sent 40 vehicles into Syria soon as Biden got in the office. We got this going on with Ukraine, where they're talking about attacking the Donbass region, and you still got Israel threatening Iran, talking about bombing them. So we got like 3 to 4, maybe 5 hot points in the world. If you throw in Israel and Lebanon, southern Lebanon, we got a hot burnt down, so you can say 5. So it's upon us as human beings, citizens of these different countries, to call into these programs and also write letters to our congressmen or to your parliamentary people and tell them, look, we don't want war. We want peace. We want to work with each other. But it's becoming so scary. I couldn't believe Biden actually said what he said about Putin, but he said it. He said it.
Yeah.
So yeah, so it's like, it's almost like we have to do our own little thing on the side to promote peace and stability in the world, so things will get out of hand. And I wanted to add something else, man. It's slipping my mind. The thing is this: you got to stay upbeat when you're dealing with these tough times. With all these prophecies running around that you're gonna have nuclear war, you have like they had something dealing with I saw something last year dealing with a guy named Bill Ryan from Project Camelot. They deal with UFOs, right? So I take a lot of what they say with a grain of salt. But some of the things he was saying that he got information about a war was going to be started by using a pandemic, a virus, and it was going to plant it on China, and China was going to accuse the West, and then the West was going to accuse China. Then before you know it, you're going to have a small scale nuclear war. Then it was going to lead to a large scale nuclear war. It's a 10-year-old video that's on YouTube. So when I'm hearing this man speak, I know he deals with a lot of conspiracy, and you got to take a little grain of salt from it. But at the same time, what he was saying is kind of not all the way lining up what's happening right now, but it's kind of similar, parallel to what he was saying, that the information that he got from somebody that was part of the Downing Street crew, part of the Laws of London crew, part of MI6, MI5, that somebody handed him some information that they were saying that basically the Chinese is basically getting too powerful and you got to knock them down to size. And they're going to try to use the United States to do it. In the process, the United States will be wiped out too, basically. So I'm going to share that link in y'all YouTube stream. And also, I'm going to share a link on your Discord. Maybe y'all can check it out. It's 57 minutes long. But the first 40 minutes, he talked about that so-called conspiracy. Then the rest of the 17, 18 minutes, he talked about UFOs and stuff like that. But but the thing is this: we can't let nothing is predestined. We create our own destiny. We just can't just because Notre Dame or Baba Vaga from Russia, from southern Russia, might say that the war might end in the Holocaust, doesn't mean it's going to happen. You have to keep the faith. You got to keep on driving forward, and we got to, stop these things from happening. It's going to get to the point where, some of the people that's calling, if you never protested before, you might have to start going in the street and protest. As long as you don't block traffic, you be peaceful. You sit up your tables, and you converse with people, man. And you get as many people as possible, because if that's what it takes, that's what it takes. The Slender Institute, the LaRouche organization, is having a forum tomorrow at 12 o'clock. You can watch it on YouTube. You go to Slender Institute or the LaRouche organization on YouTube, and so y'all can watch these people speak. They might have, what's his name? They call him he used to work with Roger Stone. They might have him. They might, and they're gonna have the Ray McGovern. I think he might be on the panel, and Bill Benny. He might be on the panel. Yeah, Bill. He might be on. So y'all check that out tomorrow. But anyway, y'all continue doing what you're doing. And Alex Christopher, you need to be on Fault Lines and also the backstory too, because Alex, he be on those programs, man. We're waiting for you to be on it too, man.
I never get invited, man.
What? I'm gonna put your name up. I'm gonna put your name down, man, because I put everybody that makes sense. I call when I talk to like John Kukura in the afternoon with him and Lee Stranahan. I put names. I say you need to talk to Matthew this and this person. And when Monday come around, or even this evening, I'm gonna say, man, y'all need to invite Alex Christopher on too, man. And also Alex too. The other Alex, You got to write both of them on, especially ask Christopher, because I mean, man, because y'all deep. I ain't gonna lie, and thank you and God bless you, y'all, for having this channel, man.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Take care.
Sharif, can I just also say I agree with you, by the way. We should never give up and give up to counsels of despair. I mean, we've heard some very difficult and true and valid points about how difficult the situation is and how bad things could go. But of course, if we sit back and do nothing, then they will be bad. And we're not sitting back doing nothing. We're here on this program, answering questions, analyzing and discussing things. And that's what we must all do, and we must organize. And there is still time, I'm convinced of it, to turn things around.
All right. Thank you, Sharif.
And I agree. And thank you, and God bless.
Thank you. Thank you. Take care. All right, let's go to Blake. We're going to bring in Blake. Yep, Alexander. Biden did say it, though. He did say it. He went there. That was a big mistake. Blake, you're up.
He's trying to walk it back now, I think, actually.
No, there's no walking it back.
No.
All right, Blake, how you doing?
Sort of thing that's it's just a cut through. Yeah, carry on.
Oh, you can keep going, Alexander. If you
Just very quickly, I mean, please come along, Blake. Talk. Now, I was just going to say, it's the point about killer Putin. It's cut through. I mean, it's something that even ordinary Russians have picked up on. But Blake, I interrupted you, and that's quite wrong. So, please.
No. All good. Okay, so thanks for having me on again, guys. I think I was on here about 2 weeks ago, and I enjoyed it. And yep, I will start now. I'm not sure if you've answered this because I only come halfway through the program, but what are your thoughts on all this woke stuff with Meghan Markle and the effect it's going to have on the monarchy in the UK? What are your thoughts on that?
We haven't touched on this, actually. I mean, one point I did make is that
we did a show on this.
Yeah, we did do a show on it.
Yeah.
What is fascinating about the Meghan Markle thing, which by the way, I don't think it's going to have a major impact on the monarchy. I think people are wrong about this. But how much attention that her claims about what was said about her, her child, what supposedly a member of the royal family or the royal household said about her child, how much attention that has received, how people like, Biden, God help us, Michelle Obama have rode in and have supported her. Whereas Prince Andrew, against whom far more serious things are alleged, how little people talk about that. And I do find that very surprising and rather concerning. I don't think it's going to have a major impact on the monarchy. I think the monarchy has had a lot of problems, and I think that the behaviour of some people in the monarchy in the royal family has not been exemplary, to put it mildly. But as an institution, Britain's constitutional and legal system and its culture, if you like, are so wrapped up in the monarchy that I think it would take far more than Meghan Markle even to dent it, much less to upset or derail it. So I don't think it's going to have a big impact on the monarchy. What is interesting is how much attention this piece of gossip actually did receive, because she made the allegation that she did.
No, that's fair, and I agree with your sentiment. What I do find interesting, the only thing I think might happen, but I think it's unlikely, is there's always been a sense in my mind that for PR reasons, possibly William might skip Charles, or there's a period where Charles comes in very quick, abdicates within 6 months or something like that. Because I can't really see Charles ever skipping, but maybe he might not be there long. What are your guys' thoughts? What are your thoughts on that?
I agree with that. I mean, for one thing, he will become king. I mean, this is a hard thing to say, but he will become king an old man, because his mother has reigned for so long. I mean, she's the longest reigning British monarch. So she's reigned for so long that by the time he becomes king, I mean, we will already be looking beyond him. And perhaps, given that is not a dignified situation for a king to be in, he may decide himself that, you know, having waited this long, maybe it's not worth it really, when he's only going to be there for a short time, and that there's really not much point in him being on the throne to keep the throne warm, if you like, for his son to succeed him. So we will see William be king, I think, before very long. And if Charles does succeed, he will only be there for a relatively short time. I agree with you. I think that is a real possibility.
Yep, and just
a real possibility.
Oh no, that's thanks for that. And just to shift gears a bit, now I'm from Perth, Western Australia, and we recently in WA we had an election, and the Labor Premier Mark McGowan basically annihilated the opposition or the Liberal Party over here. And the reason why I bring this up is it's a very interesting event. And what I will say is there's a number of issues at play. COVID, the federal scene is very toxic as well. And what I'm going to say to you guys is watch what's happening with Scott Morrison. They're not getting away from this issue of there's been rape allegations against the Attorney General, which they're historic allegations, and it's wrong really, because it's the media, it's trial by media. They're saying that, you know, he's guilty. The lady's now passed away, and there's no way of ever proving it. However, there's been a number of other scandals, and Scott Morrison already, I think before this started a few months ago, he was 52% in the poll against Labor. Now it's flipped. Now it's Labor's 52 and he's 48. So already you can start to see. And what I'm saying to you is Scott Morrison's just trying to ignore it. He's trying to do a lot of commentary over here, calls him Scotty from marketing. He has he's very good at coming up with these ways, these phrases of getting the attention off him. And I think it's going to start to unravel. He has to have an election within a year as well. He can drag it out a bit till next year, but he can't go much after March next year. So that's another one to watch as well.
You mean snap elections are going to have to take place?
Oh no! So how
the regular
elections? Okay.
Yeah. So how it works in Australia, federally, is it's not fixed. So he has a period of about a year. It's roughly every 3 years, but he can drag it out. So there was talk he was going to have it early this year, say. He was going to have it in August or September, but now he can drag it out all the way till March next year. So that's what he will probably do now, because currently he has a majority of Craig Kelly left the Liberal Party over he was promoting ivermectin and hydrochloroquine as alternatives for COVID treatment, and over here they kind of forced him out as a result, and he was from New South Wales. So now the government has a zero majority. It's a minority government in essence. So if what happened in Western Australia happens again at the federal election, they've lost government. So what I'm saying to you is they're on a tightrope. So Labor will very much it's looking like it's starting to build in their favour, even though they have a very unpopular leader, which is funny. But yeah.
Well, that is very interesting. That's extremely helpful, actually. Australia is always a very interesting country. But I mean, Australian politics are closely followed in Britain, I should say, and they have an effect here. When Australians vote a particular way, or political changes in Australia, they do have an impact in Britain. I remember all the way back when Gough Whitlam was removed. I can remember what an electrifying effect that had in Britain way back in the 1970s. And when in a previous job I used to sort of do legal work, one of the things I discovered was that the decisions of the Australian High Court are accepted as precedents, valid precedents by British courts. So we follow Australia very closely here in the United Kingdom. So that's really useful. That's very helpful information.
Yeah, and just on the stuff in Australia, with the the allegations that first started with a girl called Brittany Higgins. And I have to say, I know from my own experience, it's been dramatized, and I don't know if this is, if you could give me some, in other countries from your own knowledge, Alexander, in the federal parliament, and I've been involved, that's all I'll say, but I've been involved as a staffer previously, and the culture, it's very much work hard, play hard, and there is not a very good element. And that's where the opposition's gaining a lot of traction, is because they're talking about bringing in an independent mechanism, and the government's trying to go, no, we don't want to talk about it, brush it under the rug. Yeah. Their side's guilty as well, of course, and even the Greens over here, some of their members cry out the most, and I know for a fact that some of them are the biggest hypocrites on this issue, but that's beside the point. But there should be an independent mechanism, and as a result of Scott trying to brush it under the rug, he might lose government. So it is very interesting.
Yes, you're quite right. By the way, it happens in many countries. It certainly happens in Britain. And we even had a TV drama series called The Thick of It for a time, which was all about the kind of things that used to happen amongst staffers in Westminster and in Whitehall. So you're absolutely right. That is entirely commonplace in politics in Britain, and I'm sure in many other countries, and there aren't many external checks and controls about it at all.
But now it's being weaponized.
And I was going to quickly add a lot of hypocrisy as well involving it also. I mean, a lot of the people who are most vocal in complaining about it, you don't want to look too far into the kind of things they've been up to.
Yeah.
No,
so sometimes it's better to just not know, because then when you do know what they're up to, it's just like you're like, I just don't want to deal with this anymore.
I'll tell you the other thing, which I mean, because I was never a staffer in Whitehall. I mean, I know people there. The bad language that is used, I don't know whether this is true in Australia, but the sheer coarseness of language that's used is shocking amongst staffers, and not just staffers, but ministers and officials in Britain. And that is new. That really started in the way that it did under Tony Blair. Tony Blair brought an awful lot of that culture with him into government, which hadn't existed before on anything like that kind of scale.
No, it's similar in Australia. Kevin Rudd was notorious for saying the F word to people, and when Tony Abbott got rolled as Prime Minister, they partied so hard in his office they smashed a granite table. So,
wow.
that just hey, nobody knows how that happened, but that's what happened. So, But just going back quickly, just to give you, I didn't really, with this Brittany Higgins incident, what's more shocking about it too is she got into this incident where the alleged rape happened. She was working for the defense minister at the time, and she got in there without a pass. And then the security of the Australian Parliamentary House have been doing an investigation, but none of this has come out until it got leaked. So that is also another reason why it's so damning is how does someone get into such a sensitive office without a pass? How is that possible? But
how is that possible?
Well, I don't know, but she did.
I'm now very curious as to what's going on. How is that possible?
It has been covered here, by the way. It is a very interesting story, but it's fascinating to hear it being explained by an Australian directly. Actually, no, I think there is a lot of unanswered questions, Alex, and that's one.
Okay, well, and this is what's killing ScoMo. Well, this is what's killing ScoMo, because he's just trying to go, oh yeah, I've addressed it, nothing to see here, and everyone's going, well, no. It's very interesting, but
you definitely got me curious, that's for sure, Blake. So I think we'll start to dig into it a little bit.
Now have a look, but yeah, no worries. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Blake. Take care.
No worries. Catch up. Bye.
Take care. Bye. All right, let's bring in Claude.
Can you hear me?
Hey, Claude,
Yes,
how you doing? Yes,
yes.
we could hear you.
Okay, great. Wow. Every week gets worse. I feel like we're sleepwalking into some serious conflict. And Alex, I know you're a son of a diplomat, and as the weeks have been going, I see you wear it on your face more and more. When I see the gravity of everything, you for some reason you really wear it on you. And
I don't have a good poker face, I guess.
it's a good thing Alexander is the more upbeat, positive, hopeful one. But you remember, I don't know, but you guys, Alexander probably is a child of the Cold War, same as I am. Back then, I mean, the media led with stories, of world importance, relations between Russia and the U.S. And now it's not even. I don't know if it's because of COVID. I don't know if it's because we're so far removed from World War II or what. But I can tell you, here in North America, it's not even a story. It's a little clipping on the bottom of the 6th page of the website. U.S. and China trading insults. That's to them. That's what it is. So it's like nobody seems to understand. And that's what worries me, is that you can't back up from the things that were done this week.
No,
you can't call somebody a killer and then say, well, I'm sorry, we'll be friends, or open up with what TV theater, I would call it, with the Chinese yesterday was absolutely amazing to watch. Pompeo carried a big stick, but he was very discreet. You never heard of what went on behind the doors of Pompeo's conversations. He was always very respectful of anybody. This is a complete 180 out there in the U.S. And since there's no way to get out of this, and he's just starting his presidency, I have some very, very bad feelings. I don't think you can have right now. I personally think the U.S. would lose a war if something ignited, and it won't take much. Like a previous caller said, could be Israel, deciding to take out Iran's nuclear installation. It could be China saying, "Hey, I've had enough. We're taking Taiwan back." Any one of these little points, and everybody's going to jump in their own geographic areas and take advantage of the situation. Next thing we know, it would snowball very quickly. And I don't see how we back up from where we're going. And we talk a lot about the turnip in the White House, but a big reason why he ended up there, and we don't talk about this often, but the EU had a lot to do with the coup and setting up Trump. The UK with Christopher Steele and his boss at MI6, and Italy and New Zealand, and there was a lot of countries involved in setting up Trump in Europe. And I wonder how they feel now. That they're on. We're basically on a hair trigger from war with Russia, with a NATO that is incapable of fighting because of COVID and everything, and all the I don't know if you guys understand this, but all these militaries are basically in it's kind of a strange lockdown mode where all operations are stopped, all exercises are stopped, shifts are divided up with downtime in between people coming in and out, so that there's less risk of contagion or losing large groups of your military. So the NATO is not prepared to support a U.S. military anywhere. So I don't know what you guys think, but I don't see this getting better. I don't see this. I'm very worried. If you look at Iran, North Korea, China, and Russia, we're a lot worse shape than we were during the Cold War. It was the USSR against the rest of the world, pretty much. China would have been a non-factor. Iran would have been a non-factor. North Korea would have been almost a non-factor. But now, if you're talking about an alliance between Russia and China, and we won't even add in Iran and some of the other second-tier players, but the U.S. cannot take on both those countries. as an offensive force and come out ahead. It won't happen. I don't believe so. So that's where I'll leave it. I'll listen to you guys.
Claude, you made many fascinating points. Can I say, first of all, you started with a comment about sleepwalkers. There is a very interesting book which has just come out by a Cambridge professor called Christopher Clark, and it's entitled "The Sleepwalkers: How Europe Went to War in 1914." And in a way, it's exactly similar, because just as in 1914, now, one of the real problems is that people don't understand, first of all, how disastrous a war would be. And secondly, they don't really believe there's going to be a war. And so there's a chance that they are going to take risks and make mistakes, just as happened in 1914, with issues of face and fears of losing face playing a huge role, which could drive them into making all kinds of mistakes, which they haven't really thought through. The Cold War was a very stable situation because you had two blocks. The Soviet bloc, which, as you correctly said, was almost entirely the USSR, and the United States and the Western Alliance. War was always a constant fear, and that acted as something that focused people's minds. So the overriding concern of leaders at that time was to maintain the peace. And that meant, on the one hand, that you had to have strong leaders. There was absolutely no chance that the United States would have elected during the Cold War somebody like Joe Biden, who has obvious problems with handling his job. That was just inconceivable at that time. And those strong leaders who existed at that time were always concerned about keeping the peace, about negotiating, about making all kinds of deals and confidence building measures, as they were called, in order to prevent disagreements and arguments which inevitably arose from escalating to the point where war might become possible. So it's actually very stable. And not only was it stable, but it was geographically very confined. Yes, the USSR was involved in many places. It had its presence in African countries, in the Middle East, and wherever. But primarily and first and foremost, the Cold War was focused on Europe, on Northwest Europe. That was the area where the major armies were. Now what we have is we don't have that kind of structure that the Cold War provided. We don't have the kind of focus and concern about peace that the Cold War provided. There isn't the sense that we are in an existential danger if we go to war, which existed during the Cold War. And of course, as you absolutely rightly say, the global nature of today's conflict is on an entirely different scale. Because if we have a situation where it's the United States and its allies versus Russia and China and their allies, that is a true global conflict. China is a great power in the Pacific. Russia is a great power in Europe. Russia and China are both present in the Middle East, Russia especially. So it is far more of a global conflict than the Cold War was. So we lack the leaders that we had during the Cold War. We lack the structures that we had during the Cold War, which, as I say, focused us on preserving peace. We lack the awareness of the danger of war that we had during the Cold War. And the confrontation today is global in a way that it never was at that time. So inherently, the situation is more dangerous in that respect. If you add to this the fact that in the United States, you have people with these very strange ideologies and ways of thinking, and I read that extract from that long telegram, as it's called, which appears in the Atlantic Council, that if the United States loses its hegemonic position, it's going to lose its soul. And that means that it must subordinate its national interests to maintaining its hegemonic position. When people talk in that way, it is extremely worrying and very dangerous. And I can see how we could sleepwalk, as you have put it, into a very dangerous situation indeed. I hope it doesn't happen. I think there are still some very wise and sensible people around. I think Putin, whatever he is certainly a realist, and he certainly doesn't want war. Indeed, I read out that comment where he spoke about the need for stable relations with a stable partner, namely the United States, and that was his concern. But I'm afraid that the danger of things going radically wrong is greater than it has ever been, probably since the time of the Cuban Missile Crisis, and before.
I'm going to make a prediction to you guys. Next week or within the next 10 days, Biden's Blinken and the rest of his, I don't know how to call them really, will turn their sights on the EU. And I suspect they will strangle Merkel into abandoning the Nord Stream project. And that will be the next phase of escalation. I don't know how. I have no idea how Europe will react. I suspect that they will try to do what they've done the last, maybe 5 years now, almost. That they will try to just pretend, ignore it and keep going the way they're going. But it may cost them some really. I have no doubt that the Biden regime would have no problems in putting sanctions on Mercedes and BMW and the large German car makers. It's a demonstration of it's some kind of weird demonstration of strength that they're doing right now, and they want it to be public, like they did with China yesterday. There was no reason to do what they did yesterday. They wanted it to be that way, and so I suspect that's going to be the next phase. Will be they will turn their because they kind of suggested this week we have other means to get to Russia. Well, the only other means I can see right now is to attack their energy exports to Europe. I think that's the only other leverage that they have, and I think that's where they're going to aim their sights next. Have a great weekend, gentlemen. I'm going to order a couple of those mugs, and Alex, you should raise it more often because it's so gorgeous. Yeah. We've broken most of mine. I'm really due for that one. I really love that one. So we're going to order a couple mugs on the weekend for my son's birthday and enjoy them. So I hope you have a great weekend.
Thank you very much indeed. Can I just say on the question of Nord Stream 2 and US sanctions on German companies, of course, Blinken has just given a warning that that companies, German companies, any companies that get involved in Nord Stream 2 are at risk of sanctions. If we start to see that happening, if the United States starts to sanction important German companies, then the effect in Germany is going to be enormous. And I think that one cannot overestimate the impact that will have. And Merkel herself, who has staked everything, if you like, on keeping a good relationship with the Obama-Biden outfit, if you like, in the United States, is going to be in very serious problems, because people in Germany, many people in Germany will say, well, you're supposed to be the person who is on good terms with these people. If you can't protect us from these kind of sanctions and you can't protect German interests, then what are you for? Alex, I can't hear you.
Sorry, I had it muted. War is coming. The only question, Alexander, is where's it going to be? Syria, Ukraine, Iran. I don't know. I don't know where. But it is coming. There's no doubt. Trump held off for 4 years, but these people are foaming at the mouth.
Well,
They're
absolutely. Well,
foaming at the mouth. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Let's bring in James. We'll do James here, and Alexandre will wrap up the calls and get to the super chats. James, you're with us.
Thank you very much for having me. I'm a big fan of the show. You know, it's incredible the amount of information that you guys can bring in such a short time. Well, I want to, first of all, go back to Syria, and then I will go back to Texas. These are my two principal points. So currently, the United States occupies the northwest part of Syria, the oil fields. And I have family there, so I have to be very straightforward about that. The United States is burning crop fields as we speak. And this is something that many people have not shown in the news, but according, and by the way, I'm from the Druze clan, you know, so we know what is going on in the south and in the north. So I find out that the sanctions that are being imposed in Syria are truly unbelievable. They are a crime against humanity. The level of starvation, the poverty, it's just unbelievable. And here in the United States, you know, this is going to be an equivalent of what Madeleine Albright have done to Iraq when she excused the killing of 500,000 children as worth it, you know, in order to take down Saddam Hussein. And I think it's going to get worse in Syria. It has been 10 years. And the issue for us is to understand, as many of your guests and you guys have done it, Syria is just a microcosmos of a world war. It's in which everybody is going to fight for their own resources in terms of political and economical resources. What is Syria? Syria is just a microcosmos of what's going to happen or may happen worldwide. So for us to understand it, I think that we need to see the movement and the influence of what has happened in the last 50 years, since Ronald Reagan, to be more exactly. You know, the world was bipolar. We had the Soviet Union and the United States. Then the Soviet Union collapsed. We have a unipolar world. And today we have a tripolar world. A tripolar world that is based with the United States collapsing. We have the Russia that is emerging. And we have China, which is the most powerful economy that you will ever face in the history of the world. It's unbelievable what the Chinese are doing around the world. And Chinese are not that stingy when it comes to, you know, developing their economy locally and worldwide. They are everywhere. They are in Mexico, they are in Latin America, they are in Africa, they are in the Middle East, etc. So they are now emerging economies, and this, what is happening in Syria, is in reality a consequences of this fight that we can see between these tripolar entities. And this is the issue that
hello, have we lost?
Are irrelevant. You know, that's what it is. You know, people say clearly, oh, well, you know, we have 500,000 children killed in Iraq because of the situation with Saddam Hussein. It's irrelevant. Madeleine Albright said it. It's irrelevant. Lives are irrelevant. And it will happen for us here in the United States. Lives are irrelevant. It doesn't matter how the economy has affected us. Even with this pandemic, 500,000 Americans have died because of the pandemic, and still we see our government within Trump and with Biden as an irrelevance. It doesn't matter if it's 500,000 or 1 million. It is irrelevant. People are irrelevant. What is relevant is the movement of capitals, resources, a genome. You know, there was a great book by somebody. It's called How to Hide an Empire. Somebody from Germany wrote the book, and it's unbelievable how the United States is capable of maintaining 800 bases around the world, and nobody knows it.
Yeah.
I mean, what you say?
800 bases and many hidden bases. Alexander, yes.
Well, indeed, and what you say about the situation in Syria is true, and it's heartrending also. And I mean, can I just say, I mean, there's all these people who talk about in the West about the tragedy of Syria and how Syria's been, betrayed and all this. And I was reading articles by, for example, David Gardner in the Financial Times, who always goes on about, how President Assad has created this disaster in Syria. The disaster in Syria, which we've just heard about, is entirely the product of US policies. And not just US policies, but Turkish policies, British policies. British have been very active in Syria. Saudis, all sorts of countries have pursued this extraordinary campaign to destabilize and overthrow the government of Syria. And it failed militarily, and they're now trying to choke the country economically, and they're completely heedless about the effects on its people. And it's just as you said, it's for these people, it's a chess game. They see it as a movement of chess pieces as part of some great geopolitical strategy that they're following. And they are heedless, entirely heedless of the pain and misery and suffering that they inflict on the people of these countries. And this is why when we hear all this talk about humanitarian interventionism, which is what liberal neocons sometimes call their policies, we need to understand that there is nothing at all humanitarian about it.
So the other point I want to make now is what is happening here in the south of the border. If you look at the news, you are the only section, the only news group among the very few in the alternative media that can address the situation in the border in historical terms. So the situation in the border is 100 years old problem. This is the Monroe Doctrine in its pure decadence. If you see what the migration is, the migration of people coming to the south of the border, it's not something that you say, okay, how come they are coming in masses? People are looking for the United States as what they call beacon of liberty and freedom, etc. They are looking because they are hungry. They are looking because they want jobs. They are looking because they want to have some life ahead of them. And they cannot find that in Central America. They cannot find it in Mexico. They cannot find it in many places. And the question is, why are they coming? Honduras was invaded by the United States 14 times. Nicaragua was invaded by the United States and imposed by the Somozas. And what do they do in generation after generation after generation? It's just pure suffering, invasion, stealing resources, and what is happening? One generation after another generation, they have no hope, but the only hope is to go to Mexico, and then from Mexico, come to the United States. But Americans do not understand that because they don't read. Americans in their majority, they have neither education in terms of history, nor they have culture. The only thing they have is entertainment, news entertainment that is able to provide them with little flashes of information by which they can convince them that there is a crisis in the border, but they never tell us why.
No, I have to take issue with you on this. I am fairly familiar with the United States, and my experience of American people is on the contrary, that they are educated and they have a profound culture. America is a country which has produced much culture. On the situation in the border, the reason they are not involved in it is because, of course, there is, if you like, a determination not to inform them about it. But you must never make the mistake of thinking that Americans are not people who are concerned about these sort of things. If they are told about these things, which at the moment they're not, they're certainly not indifferent to human misery or human suffering anywhere when it takes place, and you mustn't assume that these actions that happen are necessarily actions which Americans would endorse if they were made aware of them. That's
I
my
have
view.
to take that on you. You know, I have been here for 50 years, and I have seen, you know, the total disintegration of our educational system to address what you just mentioned. If you are talking about the old-fashioned American, you know, culture that was the ingenious person that was able to produce and, you know, establish some kind of what we call industrial and intellectual capacity, it's not have no problem with you. I came on those days. Those days, I came after those days. But those days are over.
Well,
today,
I hope
you speak with a child today, like my children in high school, and you will find out that they teach them clearly not American history the way we have it in the past. It's really clearly very, very disappointing to see how they are being educated today.
Well, I understand that, and I think that there's a lot of I would endorse that. I mean, certainly no one looking at the educational system in the United States at the moment would be at all happy by what they see. No, that I would definitely agree with. Yeah.
Well, thank you for having me. It's really amazing. The most important thing I will appreciate from you guys, please do not stop. You are one of the few programs around the world that we can come up, the Duran, and we can come up and learn something every day.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, James, for your comments and for joining us. Take care. All right, let's keep this moving. Alexander, we'll wrap up the college with Zahir and Alexandre. Zahir, we're bringing you into the stream. Hello. Zahir. Zahir, are you there?
No? Some sound.
Zahir. All right. Well, we'll bring in Alexandre. All right, Alexandre, are you with us?
Hey guys, you guys hear me? Hey,
Yes,
I'm pretty good. I'm pretty good. So I just want to make some quite interesting comments. I was kind of like observing over the past few weeks. So the Biden killer comment against Putin. I think if you guys remember me from like last time, I am actually Russian. We found that to be a very interesting comment. Like nobody actually got mad in Russia from like, especially what my mother was telling me. It was a very meme-filled day. It was a lot of jokes. It was a lot of hilarity and suity. So I think it was kind of a funny moment. I also think, specifically speaking, about the person who wrote that speech, I'm pretty sure that was like a kid from like born in like 1989, probably, you know, chugged a Red Bull, came into the office, wrote down a speech for Biden to give. He probably like put in there like, you know, Putin's a killer, and then wrote in there, comma, son. He had to like cross that out because obviously Biden wouldn't say that, and then gave that speech to him. I mean, that's like really what it seemed like. It was just like some kid my age who was just like amped up on something, probably listened to Kurt Cobain, you know, a few minutes before, and then wrote that speech. I mean, that's literally what it seemed like. It was just ridiculous. But the other kind of like interesting little aspects I kind of seeing is the whole sanctions thing. So when I was born in 1992-ish, like Russia. It was right when the Soviet Union fell. So what I know of Russia is very, it was economic strife, right? Like there was like never the pleasure of planning ahead. There was never the pleasure of saving. We had food problems. I remember this very like aptly, like we had to rely on garden food. So like seeing these sanctions happen, yes, they are affecting the Russian economy, but it's like most Russians, we remember the 90s. I mean, that was as bad as like life got for, I mean, even most Europeans. This is like Depression era stuff. We were preserving food. I mean, this was stuff that like, I remember when I came to America and I saw like the 1920s era when they were talking about like canning and how they saved everything. I'm like, oh wow, that's like us. You know, like it was very close to it. So I find it very entertaining how they think like these sanctions are gonna like really affect the Russian population as much as they are. I mean, it's not really. It's sad. It's definitely annoying, but I don't know what they're doing. I think it's very impotent rage is what I kind of feel like American economy is doing. Let's see what else, and I think that's really about it. I just kind of find it very interesting how like America is responding with this. They also think that I think this is another very important point too. Is this whole democracy thing? I really wanted to mention this. A lot of people don't understand that like Russians, even like my mom, who would be considered a quote unquote liberal, we don't consider democracy that great. Like, I know they keep saying, but you guys don't have democracy. And we're just like, well, yeah, I mean, it just kind of is what it is. Like when they call Putin a dictator, a lot of Russians respond with like secretly kind of like, oh, I wish. But this is just kind of like facts, like about like Russian culture. We're not the same people. So like seeing this stuff when they're saying like, oh, it's undemocratic, it's on this and it's on that. It's really just kind of, again, more mute points. I just don't think the American intelligence apparatus or like media, I mean obviously the media just doesn't get the Russian people. They keep like projecting what they want and they think that's what we want, and it's not. I mean seriously, like in most cases what we want is economic stability. That's the most important thing. Everything else to us is just kind of, it's mute. I mean, especially if you've been in a time when you can't plan ahead 2 weeks financially, it's a bit, you know, it's kind of like these are the important things for us. So yeah, I don't find an Atlantic protest to be that potent at all. I find it to be with like it really does affect kids who are like you who were not born in the 90s, but that's even them. I mean, it's not much. So yeah, I find the whole situation is very entertaining, but not very. I guess like the Russian temperature, if you call it that, it's not very fearful. I think, yeah, it's just, it's adorable. And
I think you're absolutely right. Actually, I think well, I mean, of course you are, but I think that the Russians are much more self-confident in dealing with these kind of things now than they used to be. And your point about what the Russians want more than anything else at the moment is stability in terms of their own lives because of what they went through. You're absolutely right. There was actually a very interesting article which appeared in the New Statesman, which is a British magazine, very much a magazine, by the way, which supports humanitarian interventionism, in other words, neocon politics. And
wonderful, right?
It wrote about Russia, and it was quite an extraordinary comment. Actually, he said this: today's Titan belts are unlikely to drive Russia into revolution, simply because most Russians can still remember a time when things were much worse. The Russia of 2021 may have registered close to zero GDP growth, but it is a vastly more prosperous, healthier, and more habitable country than the dysfunctional wreck Putin inherited in 2000, to say nothing of the still worse conditions of 1990 or 1950. Despite everything, the present is still a historically good time to live in the world's largest country. Contemporary Russians live longer, drink less, and strange though it may seem, enjoy more personal freedom than in almost any time in their history. And the article that went on to say, moreover, Russia under Putin, though undoubtedly deeply corrupt, is far more than the failed gangster-ridden parody of democracy that some portrayals abroad suggest. At home, it is a reasonably coherent system that asks only its citizens' passive acceptance, whilst promising in return a modicum of political participation, a decent semblance of law and order, and at least a chance at personal prosperity. For Russians who have only rarely enjoyed much of any of these blessings, all these at once is a historically alluring proposition. Now, there is a great deal there that, frankly, you can't help but see the patronizing, frankly, condescending quality that you find in so much Western commentary of the West, in the West, about Russia. But there are some glimmers of understanding of Russian reality. By the way, that article in the New Statesman, which so echoes, or at least echoes to some extent the reality, was very negatively received by some people here. They don't understand Russia. And when people tell them things about Russia which are true, they don't want to know them. And that is a very bad and very dangerous thing.
Oh, yeah. I mean, like, I keep hearing that whole, Russia has less GDP than, like, the state of Texas, which I know Texas is a wonderful place, very powerful, a lot of technology there, all that kind of stuff. Been there, great. But, like, are you trying to tell me if they isolate themselves from America, all of a sudden they're going to be, like, you know, more powerful than, like, Russia? I mean, really? Okay, well, anyways, but it's that kind of condescending stuff I keep hearing all the time. But last thing, I think I do want to kind of like say, because you guys are both Greeks, and I think, like, if you guys can't talk about this, because this isn't actually mentioned often. So there was actually one event that actually did cause a lot of pain in Russia that kind of did involve soft power from, like, the US, which was the Greek-Russian, like, Greek Orthodox and Russian Orthodox kind of quote-unquote schism. It was that event, because for a lot of Russians, like, we do consider Greece to be kind of like a precursor civilization to us. Like, we consider our language, we consider a lot of our culture. I mean, if you listen to old church Slavonic songs, a lot of even cultural, like, Russian folk songs, like, you'd have to take, like, a pause a moment, because is this like a Greek song? What's going on here? Like, it's a lot of infusion of Greek culture into Russia. A lot. I mean, we would even, like, there's even, like, a saying in Russia by, like, I forgot who was this poet, but it says, like, you know, Russia may have had the warrior spirit, but we had civilization from the Greeks. You know, it was that kind of thing. So, like, seeing that whole situation unfold, that was a very, I think, like, a hurtful moment for a lot of Russians, because we do consider Greeks, like, I mean, it's very important for us. Like, that's a very, like, it's a cultural, historical tie to us. It's like, whoa, like, I think that took us aback. So yeah, if you can talk about that a little bit, and
we did programs about it. We were both shocked by it. We thought that the actions of the patriarch were completely wrong. We thought that he acted most inappropriately and far beyond his powers. And I happen to know lots and lots of people in Greece who think the same way. Unfortunately, the political Greek elite in Greece at all times is extremely assimilated into the US, EU, NATO structures. And what was decided, in effect, came from there and was imposed through the patriarchate and was upsetting to many people, but there is no political opposition or no mechanism within the Greek world to try to push back against it. But it was a shameful and wrong thing. We are not embarrassed about talking about it. We said it many times, and we made programs about it. I don't know if you have anything to add, Alex, but that was my view.
No, we've done many programs about it, and we'll continue to do programs about it. Greece is, I mean, I've spent many years in Greece, and I still spend a lot of time in Greece. Greece is a country that is 100% controlled by the European Union, the NATO, and the neoliberal United States. Greece will never be able to act independently until the European Union just dissolves. So, and that's just a start. But Greece is still very much controlled by NATO, very much influenced by the United States.
Yeah.
And I don't see that changing anytime soon. I also think that over the many years, orthodoxy in Greece has diminished. And I think it follows along the lines of what goes on in the United States. Religion has become very, I don't even want to say secondary, tertiary, if you could even put it there. It's not the same Greece that, in my opinion, that many people may remember. But saying that, there is a lot of there are a lot of people in Greece who do want to get back to what Greece was, but it's in so much debt. It has so many problems with corruption, so many problems at the government level that it's going to take decades, if not centuries, for Greece to ever find its way forward. But we do love Russia, and we love the Russian people. That is true, and we have very close ties with Russia on a very personal level. You would be hard pressed to go to Greece and meet any Greek person and talk to them about Russians, and they would have something bad to say about Russians. I would say 99% of all Greeks would tell you very good sentiments about Russia and Russians, and that includes Putin. Greeks say very many times they wish, if only, how many times do I hear this? If only we had a leader like Putin in Greece, then our debt problems and our EU problems and our social problems would be solved.
Indeed.
You know what? Just like a last comment, I guess, before I go. I don't know if you guys know this, but there is actually kind of like a Greek oblast in Russia, like a little Greece essentially in there, where they do have like Greek food and all that kind of. I mean, there's like actual Russian Greeks like living there, and thousands of them. So yeah, just letting you guys know. You guys ever want to visit there? That's the place where you guys
I'll say this: my final word, and we'll wrap up and go to super chats, is when I go to the U.S., I always feel at home because I spent so much time in the U.S. When I go to Russia, I also strangely feel very much at home, and I think that's because of the closeness between Greece and Russia.
Oh yeah. All right. Well, see you guys. You guys have a good show.
Take care. Take care, Alexander. All right, Alexander. Let's get some super chats going.
Yes.
How are you holding up, Alexander? You holding up?
Oh, I'm holding up.
We're 3 hours and 25 minutes in.
I know.
This is awesome.
I know.
Great.
I know.
Thank you very much, Spartan Warrior Queen, and everyone for sticking with us. Alexander, let's wrap it up with some more super chats. We have a lot of good questions here. From Hunger, $10 super chat. If Putin leaves in 2024, would Medvedev be his next chosen successor? He seems to be a competent leader, but lacks Putin's killer instincts. Was Medvedev's 2008 presidency a success?
Well, I think you'll find many Russians who say that it wasn't a success. I disagree. I think he was okay, but I don't think there's any realistic possibility of him coming back after Putin is gone. I think he's been out of power, out of the center of power for a long time now, and I don't think there's any realistic prospect of that happening.
All right. From Simon Ennifer, how much of a temptation to Xi and Putin must the Biden regime be? ?
Oh, good question. A strong one, I'm guessing.
A strong one. Yeah, I would agree with you on that one. Let's see. Toilet Sauce, $20 super chat. NATO has been trying to find a Russian submarine in the Mediterranean for a week now without success. Russia is trolling them, saying, we are in contact with the crew. We know where it is, but we're not telling you. Have you heard about this story?
I have heard about this story. There's even pictures appearing about it. But there we go. I mean, the Russians are very good in their submarine technology. They're very clever and very silent.
From Simon Ennifer.
I thought it was an hour.
No, it's now.
Oh, Alex, I'm very sorry. I have to whiz. I've got.
All right.
An urgent call. I can't help it.
Okay. So we've got some more super chat questions. We'll answer everything on another stream.
Yes.
Sure.
Alexander.
Okay.
Okay. Great. So he's
okay. Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
Yes, I have to go. I'm sorry. I am under. Okay. Sorry, Alex.
Okay. Well, we'll wrap it up, guys. Everyone that sent the super chat, you can go, Alexander. I'll stay. All right, guys. So let's see. Let me see if there's some questions here that we can knock out. On the other ones, we'll get knocked out on another stream. Here we have. Let's see, from the Guitar Man 22, a $50 super chat. Thank you very much for that. Keep up the great work. I'm a longtime watcher from Arkansas. I love your unique perspective and commentary. Thanks for providing a good alternative to fake news and for international perspective and commentary. Thank you very much for that. Thank you, Margot, for being a new member to the Duran community. From Raul Pinto, thank you so much for all the news you provide while I follow you guys on YouTube, BitChute, and Telegram primarily. What other platforms do you guys use? We are not on Facebook anymore. We deleted our Twitter. So Raul, I would say that you can find us BitChute, Rumble, Odyssey, Telegram. Definitely, and Discord, but definitely those platforms you will find us. We post every day to those 3 video platforms as well as on YouTube. So Odyssey, Rumble, and BitChute, Telegram. Those are our main 4. And of course, Discord. Let's see. Skip Moyer is a new member to the Duran community. Gus Liston, thank you for your $5 super chat. Let's see what else I can knock out here. Puffin is a new member to the Duran community. Welcome, Puffin, for that, for joining the Duran community. Someone wants to know if Alexander could recommend a book on his bookcase. We'll save that for another show. From Grandma Marth, great show. Your time, knowledge, and work are both needed and appreciated. Have to sign out now. Wish I could stay for it all. Yeah, 3.5 hours. Still going strong here. Let's see what else. There was a couple more super chats here from BA, a $2 super chat. Thank you very much, BA, for that. Anatoly wants to know, is your video on big tech government bill out? Yes, Anatoly, we actually did a video on that. We also talked about how Russia is blocking, is set to block Twitter. I forgot the name of that video, but it was about a week ago. So look for it there. And maybe we'll do some more. We'll definitely do some more videos on big tech and the government bill and the Biden administration with big tech. But we talked about the guy, I believe his name was Jonathan Wu, I believe was his name, that Biden is bringing into his administration. This is the guy that that was actually very antagonistic towards big tech. But we'll see how that plays out. And Anatoly also wants to know, worldwide 2003 anti-vax protests, opinions on the anti-vax protests. I have not gotten the shot yet. I don't know everyone in the live stream if you've gotten the shot, but I have had family members who have gotten the Pfizer and the AstraZeneca. As far as protests go, I haven't seen any in Cyprus. I am not sure that there are any in Greece as well, but yeah, people are frustrated. People are definitely frustrated with what's going on with the shot and the vaccines, and more importantly, with the lockdowns. So we're still kind of locked down here, even though things are opening up slowly. And let me see. Let's see. Peter also says, just caught you at AM Departs. I look forward to watching the recording vid. Peter in New Zealand. Thank you very much, Peter, for that. Anything else that I missed here? Let me see, guys. I'm flying solo here. What do you say, Sparta Warrior Queen? Should we wrap it up? I think we should wrap it up. I think I got most of the super chats. There are a few that I didn't get to. We'll actually answer those questions on a separate show, guys. Let's see. Billy wants to know, as Kamala is so unpopular, do you think she will be told to pass up the presidency in favor of someone else, maybe Clinton? No, I don't think so. I think that they wanted Kamala to be president from the get-go. That's who they wanted, but she was so damn unpopular. She couldn't even make it to the primaries, but there is no way that they're going to have a presidency without Kamala. That's for sure. And I still think they're going to try to get Biden over the 2-year mark so that they can get Kamala to go for 2 more terms. Kamala was the chosen one. Now, I don't know if she was chosen by Clinton. I don't know if she was chosen by Barack, but there's no doubt that they wanted Kamala from the get-go. She couldn't make it on her own, so they needed Biden and all the other shenanigans that they pulled as a kind of vessel to get her over the top and into the White House. What else do we have? From Irish Partisan. Guys, check out our Irish Partisan's channel. He has a really good channel from Minsk. What do you think of Jimmy Dore's attempt at attracting disaffected people from populist left and right into a common political movement, independent leftists, libertarians, conservatives. I've been following this from Jimmy Dore, actually, and it's quite interesting. Jimmy Dore has also been lashing out a lot on AOC, which is also interesting. Look, I think it's a good cause. I think it was inevitable that you would see libertarians. You've definitely seen libertarians align with say conservatives or the Trump America First movement. So I think you've seen that, and that's been. I think it's pretty much safe to say that libertarians generally lean towards America First and Trump, and real progressives. I think there's a lot of overlap. There's a lot of differences between conservatives, libertarians, and progressives, and I mean real progressives, not like the Young Turks, AOC type of progressives, which are fake, but real progressives. I guess Jimmy Dore definitely fits the bill there. There is a lot of overlap against war, against the never-ending wars, and against the corruption of the government. No doubt about that. There's overlap there. There are some differences, but I think those differences can be ironed out. Like, okay, you have, universal basic income. You have things like $15 minimum wage and Medicare for all, things like that, which I think you have different opinions, whether you're looking at conservatives, libertarians, or progressives. But I think those things can be ironed out. I think America First and the never-ending war and corruption, I think all three groups have a lot in common there. So, Jimmy Dore, yeah, definitely. Noble cause, get it going. I think you're spot on with it. I see that Glenn Kelly's saying Jimmy Dore's spot on with this. I agree. If he can get it going and get all these groups into one umbrella, absolutely. The one problem that I do have is that progressives, and I have a bone to pick with some progressives, is that they also attacked Trump and they played that Trump racist card. And I think that was just a bad move, and it boomeranged against them. I think the Trump is a racist card. Progressives play that way too much. And I think it's wrong. It's just not true. And I think that progressives shouldn't have played that Trump is a racist card, because look where it got us. It got us to identity politics and critical race theory and a Biden Kamala White House. So that's the one problem that I do have with progressives, that they kind of just stick on that Trump is a racist thing, orange man bad thing. And, I don't agree with that. I think Trump was a good president, if not the best president we've seen in the U.S. for a long, long time. Let me see what else I can clear out. Asafed MD, thank you for that $20 super chat. And I think I got most of it, guys. There's a few super chats that I didn't get to, which are a lot of them dealing with the UK, which is right down Alexander's alley. So we'll definitely answer those in a separate show. I apologize for that, guys, but we will answer those in a separate show, and we'll also answer the bookcase, Alexander's favorite book in that bookcase. Let me see if I've got anything else. Thoughts on platforms like Odyssey and the future of freedom of speech on the blockchain platforms. I like Odyssey. I think Odyssey doesn't get as much promotion as it should. It's on the blockchain. I think it's good. I like the design. I like everything about Odyssey, and blockchain is the future. I don't even think it's the future. I think it's now. Everything should get on the blockchain, no doubt about it. And everyone should start looking at crypto, start looking at Bitcoin. I think there's a lot there. And we're just now way, way at the beginning of this. So as far as decentralized finance and the blockchains and NFTs and all this stuff that's going on, it's really exciting, guys. And we'll get some more people who are crypto oriented, and we'll get some crypto leaders onto some more shows. I've got some good people lined up, and I think there'll be a really nice surprise for some of the shows that we're going to do. And these guys know a lot about crypto and decentralized finance and the blockchain, and we'll get them on the Duran. And Skip Moyer says, it's Charles, unable to send a super chat. Send the organizing idea in the comments. All right, so that's Charles. Charles put the organization idea in the comments. We'll put it into the comments. All right, Charles, we look forward to that link, and I will put that link on the Duran website. I'll also drop it into the Discord server. And BA says, missing out on sleep has been worth it. Thank you, BA, for that super chat as well. And Let's see. The English loyalist. What are the chances of seeing a renewed UK-Russia alliance against the continental system called the EU? I think Russia is going to continue to engage with the EU, actually. I don't think the Russia-China alliance is going to disengage from the EU. I think Russia is going to definitely disengage from the US for the Biden presidency. I think they're just taking their ball and they're just leaving the playground, and they're not going to come back until they maybe see a different president. I think Russia was very much ready to work with Trump, but that didn't happen. As far as the EU goes, I think the EU is too valuable a partner for Russia to give up on. So I think Russia will continue to engage with the EU as much as the EU wants it. Unfortunately, the EU also does a lot of stupid stuff, and they follow a lot of the dumb neocon and neoliberal policies of the deep state. And of course, you know, the people in Brussels aren't exactly the most competent of folks. So I don't expect much from the EU, but Russia will continue to engage with the EU as much as they can. And let me see if there's anything else, guys, and we'll wrap it up. We will wrap it up. There's a lot on the UK, 4 or 5 super chats on the UK, but I think that is it. So I think I got to most of the questions here. From Johnny Wishbone, both the US and Canada are going down a very dangerous path. Both countries have leadership that do not speak to the real issue of the economy and national security. Liberalism kills. That's a $50 super chat from Johnny. I agree with you there. I think the USA and Canada are definitely, and Europe. I mean, we're just sinking into a really, really deep, a deep rut with a lot of the identity politics and all the SJW woke stuff. And as I said earlier in the stream, guys, I think if the US and Canada and the European Union, if stuff starts to break up, then it's going to break up from within. I don't think it's going to happen from outside forces, including China. And I think we're seeing that in the US. Unfortunately, the globalists are trying to tear the United States apart. And it's heartbreaking to see. But and they are succeeding. I'm a little more cynical than Alexander, guys. Unfortunately, there is a large part of the American population that goes along with this stuff and champions this stuff and buys into this stuff. Propaganda is very powerful. There's a reason why MSNBC and CNN are still around and big tech thrives. Propaganda is very, very powerful, and it does work. BA says, Nuggets News includes a lot of geopolitics in his crypto vids. A collaboration between him and the Duran would be very good. Nuggets News. I don't know that. Is that a YouTube channel? If it is, can you drop that channel into the comments box after the video? And we'll definitely try to get in touch with them. Nugget News, I don't know them, but if it's crypto, I'm definitely very interested. I'm very interested in crypto, guys. All right. I think I got everything. There's a few super chats. I apologize. Those super chats on the UK I will leave to Alexander. We will dedicate probably another live stream and get those knocked out. All right, guys. Spartan Warrior Queen, thank you very, very much for your moderation. Thank you to everyone that moderates the Discord server as well. Thank you very much, guys. Thank you for the super chats. Thank you for your support. How did I do flying solo, guys? Let me know in the live stream down below. Let me know if I flew solo all right without Alexander. I think you guys got to see Alexander's wife, though, for the first time. I think that was a first. So more secrets about our lives are being revealed. All right, Spartan Warrior Queen, have a great weekend. Everyone that's watching this live stream, have a great, great weekend. Thank you very, very much. 3 hours and 42 minutes. Wow. All right. Chris Katz says, great solo flight. Thank you very much. All right, everybody. Take care. Have a great weekend. I'm signing out. I'm going to get something to eat. Man, I'm starving. All right, everybody. Take care.